So this chapter is actually concluding a sequence of themes that we have been covering in the Bhagavad Gita. And it's talking about the divisions of faith. So we've been talking about the modes of material nature. All of these discussions have centered around the gunas, the modes of material nature. And here Krishna speaks about three modes of faith and how we need to rise above these three modes of faith and establish our faith in Krishna. So very important verse, very important chapter, and this is preparing us for chapter 18, which is the concluding chapter of the Bhagavad Gita. And this knowledge is to be taken very seriously because ultimately everything is a matter of faith. Whatever we accomplish in this world, whatever we pursue in this world, whatever steps we take in this world are all based upon certain faiths. They're based upon a certain faith. Anything, any aspect in this world, our business, our work, our home, our relationships, their basis is faith, that we have faith in certain things, certain people, certain ideas, certain worldviews. And therefore we pursue those worldviews, we pursue those relationships, those people. So if we have unflinching faith in the Lord, we will pursue Krishna in spite of all obstacles. But it is a matter of faith. So what is faith? What are the different types of faith? And how do we develop this spiritual faith? This is being discussed in this chapter. And also how that faith manifests in terms of our day-to-day activities. So we'll see that other themes are also discussed because these things illustrate or manifest a person's faith. So these are the chapter sections. In the first 6 texts, the types of conditioned faith is discussed. For example, text 4 discusses worship in the modes, the different types of worship according to the modes of material nature. Text 7 to 22 are the symptoms of conditioned faith. So until we are in the 3 modes of material nature and our faith is in the 3 modes, what types of foods will we eat according to that type of faith? What sacrifices, yagyas, will we do? What austerities will we perform? And what charity will we give? And then in the final section, as Krishna does always, he talks about rising above the 3 modes and the faith that is conditioned by them, and establishing oneself in spiritual and transcendental life by chanting Om Tat Sat. So very interesting, Om Tat Sat. So we don't actually, recite Om Tat Sat so often in ISKCON and in our spiritual practices. So this is a very important theme of this chapter. So we will learn about Om Tat Sat. So I mentioned how this chapter is sort of a continuation, a culmination of the previous chapters. So this is a connection between chapter 16 and chapter 17. Why does Arjuna and Krishna, why do they begin to talk about this topic? Chapter 16 talked about the divine nature and the demoniac natures. Krishna said there's 2 types of people in this world. There's the divine and the demoniac. And those who have divine nature, they faithfully follow the Shastra. Actually, these arrows could be the other way around. Those who follow the Shastras, they have divine nature. And those who don't follow or have faith in the Shastras, they are of demoniac nature. Krishna lays it out clear in chapter 16. He says, this is what it is. And if a person is not leading their life, they're not living their life according to the revealed scriptures, according to the directions of the transcendental scriptures, that person is leading a demoniac life because their life is most likely misguided. Now, Arjuna, being a soft hearted king and leader, he then thinks, okay, that's very good. Krishna said this is, divine, this is demoniac. But what about those in the demoniac nature? What about those who have no faith in Shastra? What is their destination? How do they get liberation? So, chapter 17 describes one who, with faith, follows something other than Shastra. So everyone needs to have faith. Faith is required. Uh, Faith is required. But the point is that um, faith will always be there. Even the most rationalist scientists will have faith because they'll have faith in their reason. Faith must be there. No one can live without faith. But Arjuna is asking those who don't have faith in Shastra, that is, those of the demoniac nature, are they all the same? Are they all different? Who are they? What are they? Um, so, very key point here that Arjuna is a soft hearted warrior and is asking this question in the same way that Parikshit Maharaj asked the question from Shukadev Goswami about the deliverance of those who are fallen in this world. He was concerned about the citizens. As a leader, he was thinking, what about those in my kingdom who don't have that spiritual vision? What will happen to them? And Parikshit Maharaj asked this question from Shukadev Goswami after he hears the descriptions of the hellish planets in the fifth canto of the Bhagavatam. So Shukadev Goswami just lays it out as it is, tells him this is what happens. You go to this hell when you do this, and you do go to this hell when you do that. Of course, these are all temporary hells, but very painful, very you could say dangerous places, and long periods of time the soul may be there. So even that, Parikshit Maharaj wanted the conditioned souls to avoid. And here we see, like father, like son, right? Parikshit Maharaj is the grandson of Arjuna. It runs in the family, their concern for the well being of others. They were in powerful positions, and this was how they were applying those positions. So I just go back to the previous slide. There's a request to see this again. This is the breakdown again. Yes, I am recording it. So yes, the lecture is also being recorded. I'm using another headphones today. Can everyone hear me clearly today, or is there some echo?
Yes, Prabhu, no echo.
It's good. Okay.
Oh, echo is.
Yes, this is better than.
Prabhu, you don't have echo, but somebody else who speaks has echo.
The echo is still coming, huh?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I know why. Oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. I'm glad you checked.
Prabhuji, Hare Krishna. Can you please go back to the previous slide just for a second?
Yes.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, maybe when you are speaking, you can speak, and when everybody speaks, you can just remove the head.
No, that's okay. For some reason, I don't know why it's not working normally. Because I'm actually hearing you through the computer. I should be hearing you through my headphones.
Hare Krishna. So I think Prabhuji, this happened to me yesterday when I was in my work meeting. So your computer voice is on and your headphone is on. So I think you have to mute your computer volume somehow.
Oh, I see. Yeah, normally it just switches over. See, I think it's a Zoom thing. I need to learn how to do this on Zoom. Yes, I remember now. I have to go here to Zoom and choose the audio. And that's what I did wrong last time, and now I was doing this wrong. So we have to go here and choose the audio. Is here. Okay. Camera. These are the camera. Here we go. Audio settings. There we go. Okay. And now. Okay. So now can you all hear me? This must be different.
Yes, Prabhu.
Prabhuji, you are showing in your computer 74% on the screen, so you can raise the thing. Yeah, you can raise the volume from here. This one.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. And I'll go back to the previous slide. This one. Okay.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. So, chapter 17 begins now with the first text, which I mentioned how Arjuna is inquiring. Ye shastravidim utsrijya yajante shraddhayanvita tesham nishta tuka Krishna sattvamaho rajastama. Arjuna inquired, O Krishna, what is the situation of those who do not follow the principles of scripture, but worship according to their own imagination? Are they in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance? So as I was mentioning, he's saying, so now following what you were saying, what about those who are not following the scriptures, but are worshiping, but they're worshiping according to their own imagination, which we see very often in all the world's religions. Some people, they just like to speculate. And that's why we don't speculate. Prabhupada did not like when devotees speculated. Like we see here in the background in this picture, sometimes, people are worshiping trees and, and different statues of, just man-made ideas. Of course, if we go to Vrindavan and we worship the trees there, that is according to the scriptures. But other times people are just worshiping according to sentiment. And Arjuna is asking, what happens to them? Prabhupada, I was hearing one memories of Srila Prabhupada, and this devotee who's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada, she was mentioning how during Prabhupada's time, devotees would even resist or desist from using the words "I think." When someone would ask them a question, in response, they wouldn't say, "I think this is the case," because Prabhupada didn't want them to speculate. Either you know it or you don't know it. This is the thing, or I don't know. And this is especially a disease from India, an Indian disease, which I think we all will agree upon when they say that, when you ask someone from India something and they don't know the answer, they'll never say, I don't know the answer. They'll say, well, some answer they'll always give. I had this experience very vividly one time when I was traveling to India, and I asked a person about directions to go someplace. And later on, I realized that this person clearly had no clue where this landmark was that I was asking, where this location was. But because they couldn't say that they didn't know, he had to give me some direction. So he gave me the direction in the wrong direction. He still gave directions, but it was in the wrong direction. And I think all of you some of you may be able to relate with this. It happens everywhere. So that's not spiritual life. Things made according to our imagination. So Arjuna is concerned about those types of practices. So in this purport to the first text, Prabhupada says in the 4th chapter, 39th verse, it is said that a person faithful to a particular type of worship gradually becomes elevated to the stage of knowledge and attains the highest perfectional stage of peace and prosperity. In the 16th chapter, it is concluded that one who does not follow the principles laid down in the scriptures is called an asura, demon, and one who follows the scriptural injunctions faithfully is called a deva or demigod. Now, if one with faith follows some rules which are not mentioned in the scriptural injunctions, what is his position? This doubt of Arjuna is to be cleared by Krishna are those who create some sort of God by selecting a human being and placing their faith in him, worshipping in goodness, passion, or ignorance. Do such persons attain the perfectional stage of life? It is it possible for them to be situated in real knowledge and elevate themselves to the highest perfectional stage? Do those who do not follow the rules and regulations of the scriptures, but who have faith in something and worship gods and demigods and men, attain success in their effort? Arjuna is putting these questions to Krishna. So now in text 2 and 3, Krishna responds, and he responds in a way that is very philosophical. Krishna says, the Supreme Personality of Godhead said, according to the modes of nature acquired by the embodied soul, one's faith can be of three kinds: in goodness, in passion, or in ignorance. Now hear about this, O son of Bharata. According to one's existence under the various modes of nature, one evolves a particular kind of faith. The living being is said to be of a particular faith according to the modes he has acquired. So, according to our association and according to the modes that we pursue, our faith will develop according to those modes. Which is just so true, right? I mean, all we have to do is look around us and observe the world, and we'll see how people are so driven by the modes that they associate with. They give their life to something based upon the modes that they associate with. Some people will dedicate their entire life to skydiving, something that is so dangerous and serves no beneficial purpose for the world. But their whole life revolves around skydiving. Why? Because they've developed that faith, the faith in the parachute, the faith in that type of activity, just because this is the modes that they have identified themselves with. And it becomes their entire passion. Similarly, another person will focus their entire life around academics, studying, research, and many times waste their entire life researching something that is of such small importance. Will spend their life on some theorem or some sort of a electronic thing, and spend their entire life. Why? Because one's faith evolves, Krishna here is saying, according to the modes that we associate with. Therefore, all the scriptures and the acharyas say that we must associate with the devotees of the Lord, because then our desires, our faith evolves in the direction of spiritual realization. So in this world, right, we find people have so many different types of faces. It's something actually very amazing that we take for granted. But people have so many different types of faces. And all of these faces are reflections of the mentality that we develop, which is developed with our association and the modes. The physical body follows the mental body. So our mentality exhibits or forms our form. Prabhupada says the face is the index of the mind. That's why the devotees of the Lord, like Prabhupada, for example, they have very brilliant faces, very deep faces, because the face is the index of the mind. Of course, this can also be misleading, sometimes and it's true, this is why sometimes to show a person's, to try to make a show of a person's wisdom or their knowledge, they will grow a beard, right? It's a very academic thing to do. You grow a beard to become more recognized. If you really want to make impression on people, you should have a nice beard, like our Prime Minister of India. He's now grown a very nice beard. It's impressive. Why? Because the face is the index of the mind. That people trust that more. They think, oh, this person must be very thoughtful because their face is very sober. So our physical body, our physical form is developed based upon our desires and our association. In the previous chapter, Krishna describes two extremes, the divine and the demoniac. It's clear, however, that each of us have many faces and are not necessarily one or the other. So this is also the point. I mentioned how Arjuna is concerned about the demoniac, those who don't follow Shastra, but there's also people in the middle, sometimes following Shastra, sometimes not. People are not necessarily one or the other. Life is never black and white, but usually different shades of gray. The faces that we present on a daily basis reveal something about our faith, the things we trust, pursue, and place value upon. As they say, what makes him tick? There are certain things that make us tick, that make us move. Chapter 17 describes how a person's affiliation to a particular mode will determine the type of faith they have. One person is able to give up the world and lead a life of a monk simply because of the faith that they have. So it's all a matter of faith. Text 2 to 4. According to Baladev Vidyabhushan, these texts describe persons who have given up following scripture out of laziness or because it is too troublesome, but still worship demigods. So now in the next few verses, Krishna, and also these verses, Krishna is speaking about those who are worshipping, they're still following the Vedic principles, but not according to the scriptures, because they're lazy. They don't want to take the time to do it properly, to find out the truth, and they want material happiness. If one does not follow the scriptures, he will follow his natural instinct, which will be either in the mode of goodness, passion, or ignorance. So when we don't follow the scriptures, we follow our own modes. And this is the risk that is there when we follow our mind. If our mind is in the right place, we'll go in the right direction. But if it's not, then what will happen? When one does not base his faith in Shastric injunctions, his faith becomes based upon his mentality, which is a product of his particular conditioning by the modes. We choose our object of faith according to our nature, which comes from our previous lives, and our mind or heart, which will be addressed in text 3. So here, very important point that we also choose our object of faith. Faith is also determined based upon the association, as I was mentioning, the different faces that we develop based upon what we associate with. But also, we're born with a certain face. So it also comes from our previous lives. And if our previous life is not so good, our faith may also not be so good. And Prabhupada also speaks about the heart, which is the next slide. Simply acting in faith according to our nature and mind will not bring us to perfection. While it is possible to choose to change our modes, such a change can only take place with knowledge gained from one who knows, a genuine guru who repeats the words of the Shastras. Prabhupada in the purport, he says, since the living entity is in contact with material nature, he acquires different types of mentality according to his association with the material modes. But this nature can be changed if one associates with a bona fide spiritual master and abides by his rules and the scriptures. Gradually, one can change his position from ignorance to goodness or from passion to goodness. So most of us, practically speaking, all of us are born either in the mode of passion or ignorance. But we can change that to goodness by abiding by the rules and regulations through the guidance of the spiritual master. So One subtle point here, one important point here is that faith itself is always in the mode of goodness. Faith is born in the mode of goodness. However, the object of our faith can be in ignorance, passion, or goodness. And therefore, everything that we have faith in becomes conditioned by the object of our faith. And the example that Prabhupada gives is that, that everything, all of these, everything in this world, wood is an example, but everything in this world contains some fire in it. I mean, most things in this world. Smoke also contains fire, and fire also contains fire. So fire is the same in all of these three things. However, based upon where the fire is present, it gains or it possesses a certain quality. So when the fire is present in wood, you cannot really see the fire, and that is like faith in the mode of ignorance. When the fire is present in smoke, it's in the mode of passion, and as fire itself, it's in the mode of goodness. In a similar way, one who wants to make a spiritual advancement must come to the mode of goodness in behavior. A sadhu is known by behavior. So we always have to try to be present in the mode of goodness and apply our faith to things in the mode of goodness, and then our faith will also be of that type. Wood, smoke, and fire all contain fire, but fire is, but only fire is useful for cooking. In ignorance, there may be some faith, but it is not useful. In passion, there's indication of spiritual life, just like smoke indicates fire. But again, it is not useful. Only when there's fire can one cook. So in the same way, spiritual advancement can be made only when we are in the mode of goodness. We must be established in the mode of goodness. A theme that Krishna has now said so many times, right? All of you have been attending all these classes, reading all these chapters, and Krishna is telling us, he's talking about the modes so much. So it must be so important to try to not just practice Krishna consciousness, but also be cognizant of endeavoring or striving to be in the mode of goodness, always. And this is the last big quote. I'm sorry for all these big quotes, but Prabhupada here makes a very beautiful point here. The contaminated modes of material nature expand in the heart. Therefore, according to the position of the heart, in contact with a particular mode of material nature, one's faith is established. It should be understood that if one's heart is in the mode of goodness, his faith is also in the mode of goodness. If his heart is in the mode of passion, his faith is also in the mode of passion. And if his heart is in the mode of darkness, illusion, his faith is also thus contaminated. Thus we find different types of faith in this world, and there are different types of religions due to different types of faith. The real principle of religious life is situated in the mode of pure goodness, but because the heart is tainted, we find different types of religious principles. And this is a very fascinating point that Prabhupada is making. This is why I have quoted it here in full, because I've noticed this very much in my own life, that if someone's heart is not in the right place, their faith will not be in the right place. And no matter what we do, it's very difficult to convince them of something. But if someone's heart is in the right place, things automatically come forward. Things automatically, they naturally see things correctly the way they are. If someone's heart is averse to someone else, then no matter what the facts are, they're always going to see it from that tainted vision. In the same way, if someone's heart is attached to someone else, they say beauty is in the eye of the beholder, then their faith will also develop in that way. So it is all a matter of the heart. And this is why bhakti or bhakti yoga is the most powerful process to establish our faith in goodness, to establish our faith in Krishna, because it brings the heart in the right place. And once the heart is in the right place, our faith is in the right place. So it all starts with bhakti or devotion. So now Krishna talks about this bhakti, talks about this worship, how this worship can be in different modes according to where our heart is. So worship is of 4 different types. Those in the mode of ignorance, they worship the ghosts and the spirits. And this is true. You know, there's people who actually do worship the ghosts and spirits. They do black magic and all these things. Those in the mode of passion, imagine, passion is also not so good. They worship demons. So you might think, well, demons are the same as ghosts and spirits, but no, I guess they're a step better. Krishna here is saying, those who are in the mode of goodness, they worship the demigods. So those who are worshiping the devas, still they're in the mode of goodness. And those who are transcendental to the modes on the process of bhakti, they worship Krishna. They worship a personal God, Krishna, Jehovah, Allah. These are all on the transcendental level when we worship God or pure goodness. But these demons and the ghosts and the spirits, we may think, well, who worships these people? But we do. We conscientiously or unconscientiously, we worship these people by worship means, right, giving a part of our faith in them. We put our faith in them. We put our faith in the political leaders. In some places, such as the Ishopanishad, the worship of demigods is described as being in ignorance. Clearly, it is not only the object of worship, but also the mentality and motive, as there are demons in ignorance who worship demigods. So we see that Hiranyakashipu and Ravana, they also worshipped the demigods, but they did so to destroy the world, to do heinous activities. So their worship of the demigods was still in the mode of ignorance because it was intended to destroy others. But if we're worshiping the demigods, not for those purposes, then it is said to be in the mode of goodness. And so in different places, well, said different things, but it's important to understand that they are complementary, those descriptions. They're not in contradiction because they're based upon the mentality of the worshiper. Many persons in modern society worship some political leader, entertainer, and so forth. There are also persons who worship evil spirits and perform demoniac rituals to get some powers and wealth. Sometimes they have sexual rituals as part of their worship. So this happens, it really does. We are not acquainted with it because we are in spiritual life and in Krishna consciousness, but people are worshiping spirits and, they do rituals that are very much in the mode of ignorance as part of their believed spiritual practice. Prabhupada, Krishna here says, those who undergo severe austerities and penances, not recommended in the scriptures, performing them out of pride and egoism, who are impelled by lust and attachment, who are foolish and who torture the material elements of the body, as well as the supersoul dwelling within, are to be known as demons. So we find people who are engaged in worship, but they do so without any concern for the scriptures. They are impelled by lust and attachment, and their practices just torture the body, which we have no right to do because the body does not belong to us. And Krishna is so interesting. He says that it also tortures or gives pain to the super soul dwelling within. Krishna, as a friend of the living entity, is present in the body of the soul, is present in the body of the living entity, and he is caring, he is concerned about the living entity's happiness and distress. And so when we do austerities, meant to show power, meant to increase our power, that torture the body, that type of austerity is demoniac. Here we see a yogi, he's sitting on a bed of nails. So such practices, while they are worshipped or very much revered in modern society, in materialistic society, are not considered to be spiritual, are not considered to be in the mode of goodness, according to Krishna. We see people do like piercings and all these things sometimes as spiritual practice. This is all made up, and it's impelled by lust and attachment. Like we were discussing last time, if we even perform bhakti, if we perform devotional service, but we do it with the intention of increasing or improving our material life, our material position, then that devotional service, that bhakti, is in the modes of passion and ignorance. It is bhakti, it is still okay, it is appreciated by the Lord, but it's in the mode of passion and ignorance. What to speak of those who are not doing devotional service, but doing spiritual, so-called spiritual activities only out of pride and egoism? That is not true devotion. Like, very key point here. Sometimes even in our movement, we see that, devotees are engaged in bhakti, but it's like all about them. It's like all about them. It's about, how beautiful they are, how famous they are. And pretty soon that bhakti is also about, some sort of, um, a fan club or this or that. So Krishna is giving us this knowledge so we can avoid those types of that consciousness. We can avoid those types of practices and motivations, not waste time and go on that detour and waste 10, 20 years in doing something that is not really bhakti, but really meant for our own well-being, our own egoism. And we can actually engage in devotional service simply for the pleasure of the Lord. Like I was giving last time, the example of Raghunath Das Goswami and his parents. Lord Chaitanya did not appreciate Raghunath Das Goswami's parents, did not appreciate their devotional service so much. Because although they were giving money to support the propagation of Lord Chaitanya's movement, when their son Raghunath Das Goswami wanted to join Lord Chaitanya, they were stopping him. They were continuously stopping him. So Lord Chaitanya felt that their giving of money to the propagation was more for their own reputation as charitable people than it was out of the principles of pure devotion. Because otherwise, why would they stop Raghunath Das Goswami from joining him? So this means it's done out of egoism, and that is not pure devotion. By taking up austerities and practices not given in the scripture, one harms the body and gives displeasure to the Lord who dwells within. Devotees need to remember that their body is actually Krishna's property and should be cared for in a way that pleases the Lord. The fate of demons, however, austere they may appear, has already been explained in chapters 9 and 16. They fall greater into lust, anger, and greed, right? And then they fall into moha, illusion, which then leads to the lower planetary systems. So this point is very important, that our body is not ours, it belongs to Krishna. And we must remember this even as devotees. Raghunath Das Goswami, at the end of his life, when Lord Chaitanya left this world, he was so heartbroken. He was with Lord Chaitanya for 16 years, witnessing his final pastimes. When Swarup Damodar Goswami and all the great devotees left, then he decided to go to Govardhan and jump off of Govardhan Hill and take his life. But Sanatan Goswami forbade him to do so because he said, your body does not belong to you. You have no right to take your own life. So therefore, we are against suicide. We have no right to determine when this life ends because it's given to us by Krishna. Again, another example of demoniac worship, demoniac spiritual practices is Kali worship, where the famous story of Jad Bharat, where these people were offering humans to Kali or animals to Kali. And Jad Bharat was a pure devotee. They wanted to kill him and offer him to Kali. And Kali Devi did not approve of this. And so she came and killed the practitioners or the worshippers. So religion can also be a form of nescience. We have to understand that one of the ways Maya acts in this world is that it makes us believe that we're very religious, although we are not. So now the next section, the symptoms of conditioned faith. Having given this foundation, the philosophical foundation, now Krishna goes and he identifies the different types of the results of different types of faith. So he talks about food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity in relation to the soul and the modes of nature. The first one is the foods in the modes of nature. So Krishna, this is a very famous section of the Bhagavad Gita. So chapter 17 is actually very famous, although we may not remember it or know it. The foods that we eat are based upon what Krishna tells us in the Gita. And Prabhupada quotes this very often, and he's quoting from chapter 17 from this section. Foods in the mode of goodness increase the duration of life, purify one's existence, give strength, health, happiness, and satisfaction. They're juicy, wholesome, and pleasing to the heart. So why do we eat what we eat? Why is it that we are vegetarian and we eat vegetables and grains and fruits? Because these things give strength, health, and happiness. They purify one's existence. They're juicy and wholesome. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he comments, bought with money that was earned purely, cooked purely, and served in a pure place by pure people. Sattva refers to virtue, which brings steadiness of mind, enabling one to remain undisturbed in the face of sorrow. Agreeable means to the stomach and the eye, and snigdha means having some oil while not excessively fatty. So foods in sattva are not also super austere foods. So sometimes people go on a raw food diet and think, I'm really much in the mode of goodness. Well, maybe, maybe not. Because Krishna is saying, pleasing to the heart. They're wholesome, they're juicy. Another place, I think we're getting to that, he says fatty. The foods are even fatty. They should sustain the body. So Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is saying, having some oil or some ghee, that food is food in the mode of goodness. But not too much, not excessively. What is healthy for the body. Here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is making a very important point that I want to highlight. He's saying, bought with money that was earned purely, cooked purely, and served in a pure place by pure people. This is in the mode of goodness. This first sentence is the most important. Somehow, I don't know, it's very relevant, this narration, so I'm going back to it again and again. When Raghunath Das Goswami, when he finally was able to escape from his parents and join Lord Chaitanya, then he was very austere, and he was the epitome or the example of renunciation. And he was leading a very simple, austere life. And so when his parents, who remember are also devotees, they're not pure devotees as we mentioned, they were part of Lord Chaitanya's movement. So when they heard that their son was leading such an austere life, they felt very sorrowful. And they said, well, anyway, he's decided to be a Hare Krishna devotee, he's joined the ashram, but at least let's give him some help. It's kind of like the rich man's son in the ashram. He has some perks, So what they do is that they send 400 gold coins and 2 people, a brahmana who can cook for Raghunath Das Goswami, and another servant who can take care of him. They send these two people with the 400 gold coins to Raghunath Das Goswami. And they say, this is just for you. You stay with Lord Chaitanya. We won't try to control your life. But you please just take use of these things because we want to see you happy. And this is like the story of any Hare Krishna devotee, right? Especially in Prabhupada's time in the Western world. Some of them came from very wealthy families. First, their parents would try to bring them back by legal things of this and that. The what do you say? Deprogramming. So all these things. But when they finally failed and they saw that their son or daughter is fully given to Krishna, their heart has been given to Krishna, then they said, okay, we'll send you some money. And you just be happy there, and let's stay at least friends, and you come and visit us once a year at least, or something like this. So it's the middle ground. And this is what they did. So Raghunath Das Goswami thought, well, okay, this is nice that my parents, they're my beloved parents. And so let me engage the resources that they've sent in the Lord's service. So he didn't accept anything. He didn't accept any of it. But he had them stay, and the money was kept with the Brahmana. He never touched the money. And every single day, Raghunath Das Goswami started inviting Lord Chaitanya to his residence, to his little hut. And he would invite him for food, and he would use the money to purchase many wonderful foods for Lord Chaitanya and have the Brahmana cook and serve this feast to Lord Chaitanya. Raghunath Das Goswami himself, as a renunciate, was living off of broken, chipped rice that was thrown in the streets. That was his austerity. But for Lord Chaitanya, he was arranging all these wonderful items and inviting Lord Chaitanya every day. And he invited Lord Chaitanya for a full month, using all of this wealth that the parents had sent. But then after a month, he stopped. And when he stopped, then Lord Chaitanya said, what is this? Why has Raghunath Das Goswami stopped inviting me to his home? And in response, Raghunath Das Goswami sends the message to Lord Chaitanya that he had stopped because he realized that the money that he was using was not coming from a place that was fully Krishna conscious. And therefore, the food that was cooked from that money was not fully pure. And therefore, that food was not offerable or consumable to Lord Chaitanya and the devotees. And in the purport to these verses in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, Prabhupada makes the point, very clear point, that this is a principle that Lord Chaitanya set. And Lord Chaitanya approves of this. When he hears of this, then he says that, yes, I was accepting Raghunath Das Goswami's invitation just to please his heart, just to make him happy because he's my unalloyed devotee. And, he was accepting his parents' service because they were the parents of such a great personality. But Lord Chaitanya says that actually I did not want to accept this food. So in the purport, Prabhupada describes it how we follow this principle also in our Krishna consciousness movement. That food that is not cooked in a pure place is not to be consumed by the devotees. And quite interesting, not just the food, but even if the money that was used to purchase the food is not from a pure place, that food becomes affected by that money. And this fact was exhibited by Lord Chaitanya himself. So in Krishna consciousness, sometimes devotees become lax on this principle. They start to eat at vegan restaurants or vegetarian restaurants. They'll eat bread from the store. They'll start eating out and thinking, well, it's okay because it's all vegetarian and I offered it to Krishna. It is okay. It's still, at least we are eating vegetarian food and we're offering it to Krishna. But it may not be in the mode of goodness, because if it's cooked by someone who had a cigarette in their mouth, or who was eating meat or smoking or drinking, then their consciousness will go into that food. And Lord Chaitanya, through this story and through this example, tells us that we should not eat that food. Here, Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is also making the same point here. Foods in the mode of goodness are not just the food itself, but also the source of the food and the money that was from where, the source of the money that was used to purchase that food. Foods in the mode of passion are in rajas. They are too bitter, too salty, hot, pungent, dry. They cause distress, misery, and ultimately lead to disease. So we all know what this means. I myself, I like chilies. I sometimes have to limit myself. These are in the mode of passion when taken in excess. As to be healthy, one must eat all 6 Ayurvedic tastes: sweet, sour, salty, bitter, pungent, and astringent. So this does not mean that we eat bland food. One must eat all 6 types of tastes. But when they're in excess, then they cause disease. Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur says that distress is felt while eating, misery after eating, and disease is a long-term effect. So in the mode of passion, when we eat something in the mode of foods in the mode of passion, is distressful while eating, it burns your mouth. It's misery after eating, it pains when it comes out, and disease in the long term. You ultimately get some disease. And I had personal experience of this. One man, one devotee, I went to their home one time. We had, they invited us, and the sabji was so hot. The sabji was so hot that, a teaspoon of it was enough for a whole plate full of rice. This is how hot the sabji was. I don't know how they made it so hot. I still cannot understand what they put into it that made it so burning hot. And so somehow managed to respect the invitation. Then I went there after 6 months, and again they invited. We were friends, very nice devotees, and so they invited to their home. So I went there, and they offered the same food. I knew it would be very hot, so I went prepared. And the man who was the husband, he was eating a different food that we were not eating, and it was just like boiled vegetables and boiled fruits, not boiled fruits, but fruits and all these things, just plain boiled foods. So I asked him, what's happened? Why are you not eating like we're eating? And he said, I went to the doctor, and the doctor said that the entire lining in my stomach is burnt. So right now I just have to, I can only eat boiled vegetables and boiled things like this. So this is ultimately what happens. If it's too hot, it ultimately burns our inner organs, and we get an ulcer or something like this, and it just leads to disease. Foods in tamas, prepared more than 3 hours before being eaten, tasteless, decomposed, putrid, remnants and untouchable things. The ill effects of food in passion affect us in this life. We get disease, right? But food in ignorance affects us in both this life and the next. So when we eat foods in the mode of ignorance, passion, okay, it burns our stomach, but it's still okay. But when we eat food in the mode of ignorance, it brings heavy karmic reaction, and we must avoid it, right? And then there's foods above the modes, right? Krishna Prasadam. Krishna Prasadam is in the mode of goodness, but also it is transcendental. So Prabhupada, in the purport to these verses, he says, fatty foods, as mentioned in the 8th verse, as I mentioned, Prabhupada takes it as fatty foods in the mode of goodness, have no connection with animal fat obtained by slaughter. Animal fat is available in the form of milk, which is the most wonderful of all foods. Milk, butter, cheese, and similar products give animal fat in a form which rules out any need for the killing of innocent creatures. It is only through brute mentality that this killing goes on. The civilized method of obtaining needed fat is by milk. Slaughter is the way of subhumans. It's a very heavy statement here, right? Slaughter is the way of subhumans. It is actually, right? So gruesome, blood, the animal screaming. So it's the way of subhumans. And imagine our entire so-called civilized society, Prabhupada here is saying, is subhuman. It's all based on meat eating. And there's so much disease. Ignorance also, by the way, foods in the mode of ignorance also cause disease. And you see, there's so much disease in Kali Yuga. And 90% of it is from the foods that people eat. From all these different, subhuman foods like meat and liquor and the different chemicals that they use to process the meat and all these things. So these are foods in the modes goodness, passion, and ignorance. Then there's also yajna, or sacrifice, in the modes of nature. Maybe I'll just take a short break at this point and see if there are any questions up to this point.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu. Thank you
Hare
so much,
Krishna.
Prabhu. Prabhu, I have a question. Especially in Bengal, this Kali worship and offering meat and offering, like you were mentioning, Jad Bharata. And then, not now, but many years back, I used to associate with a lot of karmis who had this procedure. Would you enlighten a little bit, like?
Yes. No, it's hard to imagine, but that is all in the mode of ignorance. And that's the amazing part, that like you see in Bengal, you have Lord Chaitanya's movement, which is the greatest gift to all of society. And then you have Kali worship also going on there, which is like in some forms like the worst type of demigod worship, which is about animal sacrifices and killing goats and all these things. So according to what Krishna here is saying, it is in the mode of ignorance.
It is not approved, right, Prabhu?
It's not, well,
It is completely
approved.
not approved.
I mean, it is approved for those who are in the mode of ignorance and they want to eat meat. So for them, there's a limitation. Okay, you can kill one animal and you can offer it to Kali and you can do it like this. But the practice of then making it into a form of mass slaughter, of killing many, many animals, is not approved. But Kali worship and the offering of the animal in that way is also in the Vedic scriptures. It is approved for those in the mode of ignorance as a way to limit their meat consumption and to at least make them follow certain practices so that they don't eat meat unrestrictedly. So yeah, so that is that.
So their destination will still be the, like described in the 16th chapter, even though they are worshipping, they are putting faith in Kali, but their destination will still be hellish.
Well, it will be better than someone who is eating meat unrestrictedly. It will be better than someone like that. It may also improve because as a result of following the Vedic scriptures, they may give up the practice of slaughtering animals. They may come in contact with a devotee. So the purpose of these Vedic processes are to gradually elevate the soul. So, but if they don't get elevated, they will still get the reaction and it will still come to a certain degree. Yes.
Okay, thank you, Prabhu.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Actually, thank you very much for that. So actually, what I'll do is I'll continue with the slides, and then please hold on to your questions, because I just realized that there's quite a few questions. I didn't think there would be so many until now. So I'll just finish these. These will go fast, and then we'll open it up for more discussions. So yajna in the mode odes, sacrifice. Now, yajna is translated as sacrifice, but we have to understand that sacrifice here means the activities and rituals that we do for Krishna. Although we use the English word sacrifice, this category is that of yajna, meaning ceremonies or rituals of a religious or spiritual nature. What we generally think of with the English word sacrifice is described under the heading of austerity. So Krishna here exactly doesn't mean sacrifice in the sense of sacrificing your possessions, not that sacrifice, but rather sacrifices like yajnas. So in bhakti, yajna is done in goodness to please Krishna. So the sacrifice, when it's done in goodness to please Krishna, that is transcendental on the spiritual level. In the mode of goodness, sacrifices acts that are done according to scripture as a matter of duty and without desiring reward is sacrifice in the mode of goodness. Acts that are performed for some material benefit, for the sake of pride, this is sacrifice in the mode of passion. And acts that are performed without regard for scriptures, without distributing sanctified food, without hymns or remuneration to the priests, and without faith, is sacrifice in the mode of ignorance. The only point I want to highlight here, this is sort of self-explanatory, but the only point I want to highlight is that Prabhupada specially translates in the translation, he says, without distribution of prasad. Any sacrifice that is done without distribution of prasad is in the mode of ignorance. So therefore, prasad is not just an option or something that is, we have prasad or we don't, but any program that we do. Harinam is Sankirtan Yajna, right? Chanting of the holy name is Sankirtan Yajna. It should end with the distribution of prasad. Now, of course, Harinam is always on the transcendental level. It's in the stage of bhakti. But the point being that if Krishna is given a complete process, and if we do a program and we don't have prasad, at least some type of prasad, it's described here to be in the mode of ignorance, which is, a very nice thing, because this now ensures that all of us will get nice Krishna prasad at every program. Krishna is like being very kind here. But this is why prasadam is so much a part of our process. Why Prabhupada called Krishna consciousness the kitchen religion, why he emphasized so much on prasadam, why he enjoyed cooking for the devotees such big feasts, because this is what Krishna here is saying. If we want to be in transcendental or goodness, then any sacrifice we do, that sacrifice should be accompanied with the distribution of prasad, and it should be accompanied with giving some donation. Otherwise, if we do the sacrifice, if we take the services of the priests and the devotees to engage in the process of bhakti and gain the benefits of that devotional activity, but we don't support their activities in this way, it will be in the mode of ignorance. So that is also, in India especially, it's seen as something negative to, give money to the priests, and why the priests are asking for money. But this is Krishna's process. He says that we should give something so that we are supporting that sacrifice. Then there's austerity in the modes. Like we had sacrifice, there's austerity in the modes. Austerity has three aspects, very key, very important here. Austerity is not just of one aspect. There's austerity of the body, austerity of the speech, and of the mind. So austerity is the body, speech, and mind. And Krishna defines all three. Austerity in sattva of the body is worship of the Supreme Lord, worship of the Brahmanas, worship of the spiritual master, worship of the parents, worship and service, Prabhupada says specifically, cleanliness, simplicity, non-violence, and celibacy. These are austerities of the body. And we are, when we do these things, then our austerities are established in goodness. Here, like I said, worship, it says worship and service to all of these things. So these are austerities. And in our, materialistic culture, no one wants to perform these austerities. Right? They don't want to serve the Brahmanas and the spiritual master or God. They don't want to do that. It's like, too troublesome, just lead a life of sense enjoyment. And they put the parents into care homes, nursing homes. It's interesting, I was reading an ethics book, and this is written by just, a materialist, just a normal ethics book, not a religious book. And one of the chapters was the ethics of nursing homes and care centers. Have we made legalized prisons for our retired, for our elderly in this society? So what to speak of worship or service of the parents? They're sort of put into a prison many times, just rejected. Cleanliness, simplicity. Simplicity is the austerity of the body, because luxury is more nice, but a devotee does not really take pride in buying and having luxurious things. Like the story of Sanatan Goswami, he just had one very luxurious quilt, and Lord Chaitanya would keep looking at it because he was not pleased by it. And Sanatan Goswami could understand, so he exchanged that luxurious quilt with a very simple one with someone else. And then Lord Chaitanya became very happy. So that is the austerity of the body. Non-violence, ahimsa, the principle of ahimsa comes from the Gita right here. Here it is. Krishna is telling Arjuna to fight. At the same time, he's saying non-violence is in the mode of goodness. So clearly his fighting is not with an intention of violence. It's an intention of non-violence. It's for the purpose of non-violence. And celibacy, the most possibly important one and difficult one in our modern day society. Prabhupada here defines what celibacy is. And it's very interesting. This is the full definition, what he gives in the purport. He says he should not indulge in sex outside of married life, for sex is sanctioned in the scripture only in marriage, not otherwise. This is called celibacy. So celibacy, Prabhupada here actually, he gives a very broad definition of celibacy, one that he gives further, you could say, qualifies in other statements for the purpose of children, etc. But here the Gita is like the most, it's laying down all the basic principles, and he's saying that on the very basic level, it should be within marriage. Of course, it should be completely given up, but within marriage, that is at least in the mode of goodness. Austerity and sattva of speech, speaking what is truthful, speaking about things that are pleasing, speaking words that are beneficial. This is all there. You'll read it when you do your homework. Using words that are not agitating to others, regularly reciting Vedic literature. These are austerity of the speech. So we all day, we want to talk about Biden and the latest politics and Kamala Harris and and the filibuster and this, that. All day we want to discuss these things. It's natural, small talk with our family. But it's an austerity not to talk about those things, but spend our time and words in reading the scriptures. And then we see our whole family and our family life become so pleasing when we sit and we read and talk about Krishna rather than these agitating things. And it's hard to do, but once we do it, we become attached to it. So reciting regularly Vedic literature, and then all of these things. When we're talking with people, we should not just be truthful, but we should also be pleasing. We should speak in a way that is beneficial and not agitating to others. So one thing, well, how can you do all of these things simultaneously? How can I speak something that is beneficial for someone and also not agitate them when the fact is that what is beneficial for them is not what they want to hear? So, this is very interesting. Krishna says, truthful, pleasing, and beneficial. This is the order that he says. And in terms of importance, it's the other way around. What is most important are your words beneficial for the other person? They should be beneficial. One should speak the truth, defined as what is upheld in the Vedic scriptures. And one must be prepared to quote from the scriptures to back up one's statements. Speech should be pleasing to the ear, not harsh. And what we say should benefit the hearers. If there's no benefit to speaking the truth, one should be silent. Excuse me. Of the three main principles here, truth, pleasure, and benefit, the most important is benefit. Our truthful statements should have a positive effect on us and those to whom we speak. So, if we speak the truth, but it does not improve the other person, we should speak the truth. We should speak the truth to improve everyone. And that's why we should not just flatter people. But if it does not benefit the other person, then why are we speaking it? If it does not benefit anyone, not just the other person, but it does not benefit anyone, then what is the purpose? We have to think. We have to speak in a way that is beneficial in all ways. And that is a great art. And sometimes it will not be pleasurable. That is okay, but at least it will be beneficial and truthful. But Krishna is also not speaking this word lightly. He's also saying that the austerity of speech is to say those words that are beneficial and truthful in a pleasing way. That is our responsibility also. It is our responsibility to find a way to say it in a pleasing way. One of the ways of assessing benefit is to consider whether or not the listeners are our students. In other words, whether or not the persons to whom we are speaking have agreed formally or informally to listen to us. If such a contract exists, then we may speak seemingly harsh, beneficial truths. But if there is no such contract, then generally we don't give instruction. In other words, we should not volunteer advice until that advice is going to be accepted, until that person is accepted to be our student. Because otherwise, the advice will only make that person more angry and will cause more destruction. But we must be willing to give the truth. We're not afraid to give the truth, but we have to see our adhikar. Do we have the right to speak that truth? A nice example that illustrates this is that when Srila Prabhupada was in Mayapur, then at many points Prabhupada told his disciples not to go to Prabhupada's godbrothers. Prabhupada's godbrothers were naturally very senior. They were of the same age as Srila Prabhupada. And they had direct association with Prabhupada's spiritual master Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So they were naturally very attractive, or you could say sources of wisdom. But Prabhupada told his disciples not to go to them. Why? Because although they had that knowledge, they were still not, completely in line with the bhakti principles set by Srila Prabhupada. And if you have too many different directions, people get confused. And his disciples would get confused. They would be misled because some of his god brothers were deviating. It was just a fact. They were not following the pure instruction of Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur. So Prabhupada at times would say things that were truthful, beneficial for his disciples about his god brothers, and he would point out flaws in them, like, look, they are doing this wrong, and don't follow that example. They are misled. So at one point, one of Srila Prabhupada's disciples, who was rather new and young, he came before Srila Prabhupada, and Prabhupada was sitting with the other disciples and other devotees, not his god brothers, but with other devotees. And this disciple started to praise Srila Prabhupada and say, Prabhupada, you are so wonderful. But your god brothers, they're doing this and they're doing that, and they're not so good. And Prabhupada, you are so wonderful. You're doing this and this and that. But your god brothers, they are misled. And this disciple, whatever he was saying was completely true. Prabhupada himself had made those points. His god brothers were misled in this area or in this way. So he was criticizing them. And Prabhupada listened to it for a minute, and then he stopped his disciple and he said, I can criticize them, but you cannot. I can say these things, but you cannot. So austerity of speech also involves understanding what our position is. Okay, this person has flaws, but if that person is still more advanced than me, then what right do I have to point out their flaws? The fact is, everyone in this world has flaws. I also have flaws. So if someone is more advanced than me, more spiritually realized than me, then even if they're doing something wrong, what is my adhikar or right to instruct them or correct them or point out their flaws? In the same way, Prabhupada was making this point that I am more advanced than them. I am of their level. So I am telling their flaws to teach you. But we don't have the right to criticize that person. So we will get a good response when we recognize what our relationship is with the other person and we instruct accordingly. If we are in a senior role and that person is like our student or is our student, then we have some liberty to correct them because they want that. They are accepting that role. On the other hand, if that contract does not exist, we have to see, well, maybe something has to be said, but maybe I'm not the right person to say it. I need to ask someone else to say it who is in the position to say it. So the truth should always be said, but if the wrong person says it, it can still be wrong. We have to find the right person to say it. We can go to someone else senior and say, look, these are the facts, this is not right, so you kindly say the truth because you have the position to say this. You kindly instruct this person. And then we will be very successful. Secondly, a very important point is that if we want to speak, we have to be willing to hear. So we also should only speak words and correct others when we are willing to hear what they have to say first. We should never instruct until we have taken the time to hear what the other person has to say. This is a quote from the Srimad Bhagavatam. Sharp arrows which pierce one's chest and reach the heart do not cause as much suffering as the arrows of harsh, insulting words that become lodged within the heart when spoken by uncivilized men. So this is the pleasing part. The words should be not be insulting. They should they should not be harsh. Austerity in sattva of the mind. So now we had the body, now we did words. We had the body, the words, and now the mind. Austerity of the mind. First austerity is satisfaction. Very key point here, that satisfaction is the austerity of the mind. Meaning that satisfaction is not something that just comes, but satisfaction is something that needs to be practiced. We have to practice being satisfied. Simplicity, gravity, self-control, purification of one's existence. Austerity of the mind is to be fixed in Krishna consciousness and always think of the welfare of others. This will lead to satisfaction, simplicity, gravity, self-control, and purification of existence, which are also austerities of the mind. So people who have this habit of always being dissatisfied, wherever they are, they have the best situation, or they are in a good situation, but there's always some complaint. There's always something. This is the reality is that the problem is not in their material situation. The problem is in their outlook. It is the austerity of the mind to be satisfied. And others, even though they have so little, they'll be satisfied. So goodness is when we're not hankering or lamenting. Each of these austerities are progressively more difficult. It is harder to control speech than the body, and harder to control the body than the mind, and harder to control the mind than the speech. So Krishna goes in progressive order. He first talks about the austerity of the body, then the words, and then the mind. Why? Because it's progressively more difficult. It's easiest to control the body, then the words, and then the mind. Okay, I'm going to skip this. We have less time. Austerity in goodness should be for our own internal purification and permanent satisfaction. So people in this world, they perform such great austerities to become famous or to become rich or to become powerful. They do immense austerities, but that austerity is not in the mode of goodness. That's wasted austerity. Austerity should be done for purification. Austerity should be done to bring us closer to Krishna. That is austerity in goodness, or transcendental austerity. Austerity in passion, rajas, is for increasing respect, honor, and worship, to become a hero. Austerity in ignorance is done out of foolishness, to harm oneself and others. Hiranyakashipu, here we see his picture, also performed such great austerities that Brahma said that no one in this world will ever perform austerities like you did. But what a waste. His austerities were meant to destroy people. His austerities were meant to become powerful and demoniac. If the same austerity, just imagine if he had done it for Krishna, for spiritual elevation, for the purification of his own existence, then he would have been the greatest devotee in all of human history. So it's a waste when we perform austerity, but we do it for the wrong purpose. So this is the quick summary. When austerity is done on the transcendental level, it is done for the pleasure of Krishna in goodness. When it's done in goodness, then the body is, austerities of the body are worship of God, superiors, the spiritual master, cleanliness, celibacy, non-violence. The words are truthful, pleasing, sweet, beneficial. The mind is satisfaction, gravity, and self-control. These are the austerities in the mode of goodness. In the mode of passion, it's done out of pride, austerity is done for respect, honor, and worship, not stable or permanent. In tamas, austerity is done out of foolishness, with the desire of self-torture or to destroy or injure others. And finally, charity in the modes. Charity, when done in the mode of goodness, helps make spiritual advancement. It's done charity in connection with Krishna. And again, a general point here to note is that charity is again being emphasized here by Krishna. This is so many times he mentions this, so this is something that Krishna wants us to do. But it's done not whimsically. It's done without fruit of desire, to proper person and proper time and place. And it's meant for our purification, and it's given to spiritually advanced people. Charity in the mode of passion is given with the wrong attitude. It's given to increase one's prestige. And so therefore, we should try to encourage people to give charity simply for the pleasure of Krishna, not for their prestige. Now, of course, devotees have to engage materialists in the Lord's service. And the materialists are after prestige and recognition. So therefore, devotees have to recognize charitable donations so that people give. And so therefore, they make spiritual advancement. But we should think for ourselves and for others also, that we should give charity for our own purification and not for recognition. Charity in the mode of passion is given reluctantly, it's given grudgingly. And we should avoid that. We should be giving it with our full heart for the pleasure of God. Just like in the Bible, it says, each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly or under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. And then finally, charity in the mode of ignorance is given to improper person or at a wrong place or without proper respect. So we give charity, but in giving charity, we despise the person who we are giving charity to. This is very bad. So like a devotee needs money, and we give that devotee money, but then simultaneously we, belittle that devotee, or we expect that I've seen this before, that in exchange for that charity, that devotee should serve us. So that devotee is not wealthy, so we give them money, but then we ask all sorts of favors from that devotee because we gave them money. Then that's not charity, that is business. It's okay to make that arrangement. Okay, I give you money and you do this for me or that for me, that is okay. But that's not charity. And if we think that that's charity, then that's in the mode of ignorance. If we give charity with that mindset, then that's in the mode of ignorance. Ignorance charity can be where the externals are the same as in goodness, but one's mentality is in ignorance. Or one can be giving externally to someone or something that promotes harm in society. So the other thing is to give a donation to the wrong person such that it will cause harm to others. And so the summary of charity here is, it is charity in the mode, in bhakti, beyond the modes, is given to please Krishna. It's given in the mode of goodness and given to please Krishna. Charity in the mode of goodness is given out of duty, without expectation of return, proper time and place, and to a worthy person. In the mode of passion, charity is given with expectation of return or desire for fruit of results. It's given in a grudging mood, with regret later on. Oh, why did I give it? I should not have given it. It's given out of obligation, but not out of desire, out of happiness. And charity in the mode of ignorance is given at an impure place, improper time, and to unworthy persons without proper attention and respect. So we see from all of these descriptions how spiritual life, civilized life, is so subtle. It's so nice, right? Everything is done so wonderfully. And this may be a lot, but remember, the Gita has 700 verses, and Krishna's given all of his essential instructions in the Gita. So if we just follow this, then we will be happy, right? If we're giving charity, so let me read chapter 17 before we give charity, so that I give it in the right way, so that I give it and get the full benefit. I please Krishna. I don't give it to the wrong person. I don't give it grudgingly. I give it without any expectation of return or for personal aggrandizement. So this is the art of work, as Prabhupada says, the art of Krishna consciousness. And finally, in the last section, Krishna tells us how we can transcend these modes and how all of these things, worship, food, sacrifice, austerity, and charity, can be done beyond the modes of nature. And so congratulations, we've gone through this part. We've seen, we've covered all of this material about the different modes and the relationship to these things. Now Krishna is telling us the ultimate path, which is rising beyond the modes and performing activities directly towards satisfying Krishna. And when we perform such activities, the influence of the three modes of material nature is lessened, it is reduced. And these activities lead us to eternal life. So, the specific instruction that Krishna gives, which is very interesting in this section, on how we can transcend the modes of nature and perform sacrifice, austerities, charities on the transcendental level, is to perform these things while chanting Om Tat Sat. And when we perform these activities with these words, Om Tat Sat, then it becomes on a spiritual level. So let's see, what do these words Om Tat Sat means? Krishna says, say these words while you perform your activities. And why does, saying this or acting in this consciousness rather, why does it change the mentality of our work? And this is actually similar to what Prabhupada says, where he says all of our activities should be accompanied by the chanting of the holy names of Krishna. So why do they say that? Because when we chant and we do it, something happens. Prabhupada explains the meaning of this word Om. So Om Tat Sat is there. We're now just looking at the first word Om. The sound of Om in the beginning of every Vedic hymn addresses the Supreme Lord. Because the impersonalists are very much afraid of addressing the Supreme Lord Krishna by his innumerable names, they prefer to vibrate the transcendental sound Omkar. But they do not realize that Omkar is a sound representation of Krishna. So Om is, it's kind of like the non-sectarian way of saying the name of God. And, people, they sometimes get into big fights. So, God is Krishna, God is Ram, God is Vishnu, what is the best name? Or you should chant this mantra or that mantra. So the Lord says, okay, you just chant Om. You chant Om, and that is my representation, and everyone can chant it. But Om is actually referring to none other than Krishna. But Krishna is a more personal way of saying Om. Just like all men are he, right? So you can refer to someone as he. But if you really want to refer to them, then you say their name. You say Adam, or you say Joseph or John. In the same way, all of these are names of Krishna, but you can just say the pronoun in some ways Om, that refers to God. Therefore, so we start something with Om, it means we're doing it for Krishna. One explanation, the letter A denotes Balaram, the son of Rohini. So what does this meaning Om mean? Who is the substratum of the entire universe. The letter U denotes Pradyumna, who is the supersoul of the universe. And the letter M denotes Aniruddha, which is the supersoul of each individual being in the universe. And the Bindu, the dot above the M, denotes Sri Krishna, the fountainhead of all Vishnu incarnations. So the different letters of this Om represent the different forms of the Lord: Balaram, Pradyumna, Aniruddha, and Krishna. Another explanation of this word Om is given by Jiva Goswami. And he identifies these letters in a slightly different way. He said Om is combined of the letters A-U-M. That's actually how it's spelled, Om. Then we spell it like this sometimes, but it's Om, right? The letter A refers to Sri Krishna. The letter U refers to Sri Radha. And the letter M refers to the Jiva soul. So Jiva Goswami says that AUM refers to Krishna, Radharani, and the Jiva. So therefore, Om contains everything: Radha, Krishna, and the Jiva. Thus, according to Jiva Goswami, the inherent position of the Jiva soul in the Om mantra is that of a maidservant of Shri Shri, Radha, and Krishna. So M comes at the end, right? So the Jiva is the maidservant of A and U, which is Radha and Krishna. Very interesting definition that Jiva Goswami gives. Now the second word, Tat. We can transcend the modes of material nature and perform austerity, charity, and penance on the transcendental level by saying the syllable Tat, which means Om is used both by those desiring liberation and those following the Vedic rituals for materialistic purposes. But Tat is only used to become free from fruitive activities. So even if a person wants material happiness, they'll still chant Om. Vedic rituals start with the word Om. But Tat means for that. For who? Tat means that. For Sat. Om Tat Sat. Sat refers to Krishna, the devotees, and the process of devotional service. Sat literally means eternal. All those things that are eternal, the Lord, the devotees, and the process of devotional service. A person who is fully absorbed in Krishna consciousness is sure to attain the spiritual kingdom because of his full contribution to spiritual activities, in which the consummation is absolute and that which is offered is of the same spiritual nature. So Sat refers to all spiritual activities, all spiritual processes. The Lord, the devotee, and the process of devotional service are called Sat. That is, they are the eternal. So Om Tat Sat means Om helps one remember the Lord. As we mentioned, it refers to the Lord. So Om helps one remember the Lord. Tat helps one become free from fruitive desires and attain liberation. And Sat helps one dedicate the activity to the pleasure of the Lord and his devotees. So Krishna defines Om Tat Sat in this way in the Gita. Okay, so Krishna in this final section tells us that we are able to transcend the modes and perform all of our activities by glorifying Krishna while we perform those activities. And Prabhupada, therefore, in one place he says, all activities in Krishna consciousness should be accompanied by the chanting of the holy name of Krishna. And if we do that, then it becomes pure devotional service. The same idea, the same concept is there. If Om is the same as Krishna, in fact, Krishna is better, then chanting Hare Krishna is the same as chanting Om Tat Sat. And it becomes pure devotional service when it's accompanied by chanting, because then our activity is dedicated to the Lord, but then by chanting, our mind is also dedicated to the Lord. So we could be serving Krishna, but our mind could be somewhere else. And in the course of our service, we could start doing it for ourselves. But if we are chanting Hare Krishna or Om Tat Sat, then we're doing it for Krishna, because we're saying Om Tat Sat, this is for you, Krishna. Oh Krishna, this is offering to you. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. This is all for you, Krishna. This is not for me, this is for you. So this is the reason why chanting is the basis of all of our principles in Krishna consciousness. Because when we chant and we act, then we do the same activity, but we do it for the pleasure of the Lord. We do it as a service to the Lord. And that chanting keeps us in that right consciousness. So I will stop here, and now we will open it up for discussion. So thank you very much for your kind attention. Gopal Govinda Prabhu, you can go first.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, thank you for nice explanations. Actually, my question was around that topic got a little bit higher topics came, and that question became kind of irrelevant. The food prasadam, you mentioned a couple of things in there. So at one point you mentioned that the if the money is not from the right sources, so it kind of like just worried me that bhakti bricks, we do bhakti bricks, all kind of people come and we like get the instructions from seniors that invite everybody and have them accept it. So they bring prasadam, they bring some bhoga and all those things, and not necessarily all the time clean. So what should be our mood in that same situation?
So actually in this narration of Raghunath Das Goswami and Lord Chaitanya, it's very interesting that both principles are being illustrated. So Lord Chaitanya does accept the prasad that Raghunath Das Goswami offers him for a full month. That he knows he's the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that is coming from his parents who are materialists. They're not renunciates, and he's a sannyasi. He does accept it just to please Raghunath Das Goswami and his parents, but then he prefers not to have it. And when Raghunath Das Goswami stops it himself, he is very happy, and he says, good job. So the point being that there's two separate principles. One is that for the purpose of propagating the Krishna consciousness movement, that is to please others, sometimes we have to accept this food, which of course is still going to be in the mode of goodness, but it's maybe not cooked from the best consciousness and all these things. But we still have to accept it. And Prabhupada also showed this by example. Sometimes when he had to build a temple or something, he had lunch at a very wealthy person's home as a way to kind of endear them, and then, or someone very pious, he would have lunch. But the point is that we are normally doing it for our own sense gratification, and that is the problem. Like going to a vegan restaurant and all these things, that is a real problem. And secondly, then, in that same section is very interesting, almost foreseeing our situations. In the translation and both in the purport, it says that a devotee should strictly follow this principle of only accepting prasad from a devotee, both in terms of, like we said, primarily where the food is cooked, but also in terms of where the money for that food has come from, etc. And it says that this will be displeasing to others, but a devotee should still do it. So out of it says that out of trying to please others, one accepts food that is not pure and that is not good. And although it may be displeasing to others, one should still follow this principle. So we have to see where we at in our spiritual life. Where are we at in our spiritual life? And many times we'll find that sannyasis, uh, especially those in the renounced order of life, they will not accept food at bhakti vrikshas. They don't accept it. They'll say, just give me some fruit. And the food is there for everyone to enjoy, and the food is there for those who are attending the bhakti vriksha, because I mean they're the ones who are coming, right? And that's the food that they eat every day, so why they should not eat? But it's not necessarily there for the preacher, for the devotee who's running the bhakti vriksha. And it's actually a nice practice, I find, that if you don't accept it, then people really see that this person is not coming here just for a good meal. They're coming here to preach Krishna consciousness and for our benefit. So it's very often the case that devotees, I mean, from what I've seen, very often the case that devotees will oftentimes not accept food or certain items at a bhakti vriksha. Like they'll know, okay, a very fixed up devotee has made this preparation, so they'll accept that, but they won't accept the other items, even if it's a little uncomfortable for others. And the other principle is also true, that the devotees will be sensitive to others. They won't completely offend other people. They'll try to, you know, act in such a way or tell what they are doing to do that. Yes.
Thank you, Prabhu. These are very, very interesting points. I don't want to take too much of time, but I have seen situations like Brahmachari was there, and the very senior and very popular Brahmachari was there at the Bhakti Bridge. And as you said, did not accept it. He did not accept that. But at the same time, there is a spiritual master also in the same group, not one, two, and they accepted it.
Yes. And that's why these principles are for ourselves to follow. Where people are at in their spiritual life and for what purpose they're doing it is up to them. And these principles are not for us to judge others, but they are for our own spiritual practice, our own, you could say, spiritual inspiration. Like you were saying, I've seen GBC members sometimes go to vegan restaurants and eat. Gurus sometimes having, a chocolate ice cream, like all sorts of things you see. And chocolate, there's a big controversy around it. Is it caffeine or not? But definitely it's a grain. And if that grain has been cooked and prepared by a karmi, it's not to be consumed by devotees, right? So even just for that reason, the chocolate ice cream should not be consumed. That it's grain cooked outside. So some devotees will follow that principle very nicely, others will not. And what Lord Chaitanya says, that ultimately, if we accept food for our sense enjoyment, and that's a very key point here, if we accept food for our sense enjoyment that is cooked by materialists, it will ultimately affect our consciousness, and it will make our mind materialistic. And we see this in the example of Bhishmadev. We see this in the example of many ISKCON devotees also, that how they lost their spiritual principles as a result of eating food regularly cooked by non-devotees. But the key point again there is, what is our intention also? Like the gurus, for example, that you're getting, maybe we don't know the purpose. These are elevated souls. Maybe they were trying to inspire certain individuals, or they had a certain purpose in mind, due to which they're doing it, because they're trying to attain some goal for the service of the Lord. Or maybe they have one specific pastime, some exchange with Prabhupada, where Prabhupada gave them the permission to do this. There are always exceptions to the rule. So Prabhupada, in one place, he actually even took onions and garlic. There's one specific incident where Prabhupada ate onions and garlic, and he knew it had it, but he still ate it for one specific purpose. It was a very specified example. So we just, we don't know all these things, but we should be clear that the goal is clear, the principle is the same, and we may not be able to follow it for ourselves, but that doesn't change the standard, right? So we should be clear for ourselves that this is the goal that I want to reach.
This is the instruction of Lord Chaitanya, and I won't be there overnight. That's okay, but this is the goal. That is the key point. We should not change the standards. Some devotees say, no, actually it's okay. It's actually no problem. That's very dangerous, because then, I mean, it's exactly what we're talking about in this chapter. It's bhakti done with faith, but not following the scriptures. It becomes in the mode of passion and ignorance.
Thank you, Prabhu. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Can I just add something to this point?
Sure. Yes.
So, Prabhuji, we were listening to Chaitanya Charitamrit with, Her Grace Arudha Mataji, your mother. She
I
does,
see.
Chaitanya Charitamrit with the kids,
Mm.
and both of my kids, they listen to these classes every week, and I also listen always. We most of the time listen as a family to the classes. So this is a very good point, and obviously when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu was in Varanasi, and he was invited by Mayavadis. Mahaprabhu went there when they invited Mahaprabhu there, and with all the philosophical discussion, and arguments, Mahaprabhu proved that whatever Mahaprabhu was giving, like. Harinam Sankirtan and all of that. Not because my Mayavadis were saying that why don't you follow the Vedic scriptures and things like that, and Mahaprabhu has his own explanation. So they had this discussions, and after the discussions they offered food to Mahaprabhu, and Mahaprabhu accepted food there. And actually in the Chaitanya Charitamrita it's a very nice explanation given that Mahaprabhu accepted that food because even though it was not offered, probably not offered, I'm not specifically, maybe offered, but not the way we offer. Mahaprabhu accepted that food because, anywhere you go, like specifically, Bhakti Vriksha or somewhere, or so, Mahaprabhu already had done, this Sankirtan and, chanted the glories of the Lord. So that's why, you can accept the food.
Mm. Very interesting point. Um, and see, there's so many subtleties in these things, because um, I've also heard that if the devotees go to a home and they perform Sankirtan, and if they make the offering, then that food, by the power of the holy name, and because it's for the program, they're not doing, then that food becomes purified. But the devotee should make the offering. That's very important. On the other hand, again, just as a contrasting point here. On the other hand, the food that Raghunath Das Goswami was offering the Lord was, prepared under the direction of Raghunath Das Goswami. It was, constantly he was chanting the holy name, but still Lord Chaitanya said, no, this is still a better standard, right? So there is an aspect of preaching that makes that devotee accept or compromise from the ideal. See, in the case of Raghunath Das Goswami and Lord Chaitanya, there's no preaching aspect to it, because Raghunath Das Goswami and Lord Chaitanya both devotees. And so Lord Chaitanya was, well, why should we accept this? This is only then sense pleasure. But in the case that you've described so nicely, such a nice point, and the case of the Bhakti Vrikshas, there's an aspect of drawing others to Krishna consciousness. And therefore, some adjustments are being made. So for oneself, the devotee is very austere or wants to follow the principles perfectly or nicely, and for oneself, they are not. The word is specifically, they're not. I'm losing it. Anyway, it'll come to me. So, and when Krishna sees the intention that we are trying to take all precaution, we're not acting whimsically, then Krishna is pleased. Krishna is not so concerned about the details. Oh, this time he ate this, and this is it. No, Krishna is mainly concerned that we're under the circumstances, we're trying our best. We're not acting whimsically. And if someone is in a very difficult situation, even for themselves, they may have to eat at a vegan restaurant or buy bread from the store, but they haven't made it a habit. They're not doing it out of laziness. Rather, they're doing it out of only, out of a way to sustain themselves. Yes, very nice point. Pushpanjali Mataji, you're next.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, thank you very much for the class. I had a question about that point, about the food that is cooked before 3 hours. It's said that it is a mode of ignorance. I remember reading somewhere, I think it's in the 7th chapter, I'm not read it yet. Srila Prabhupada said if it is prasadam, then it can be eaten even for a month. So when we make something and offer it, what is the standard that we need to follow that? Like how long is it?
Yes.
Can accept it?
It's a very nice point. Prabhupada actually explicitly makes this point in the purport that if it is food that is offered to the Lord, it can be consumed after 3 hours. There's no problem there. In fact, it's said that Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, he would prefer eating the food the next day after it was cooked, because especially with certain items, you'll notice the flavor gets more into the food after it sits for some time than immediately after it's cooked. Just certain items. So then it's okay, no problem. At the same time, we have to remember that in the mode of goodness, it said how those foods are healthy. And this is why Krishna is mentioning the 3-hour rule. Because the fact is that, in previous times, there were not refrigerators. And even in present times, people know that refrigerators are not so healthy. I mean, the food does lose its nutrition after it's been sitting in the refrigerator, even though it's cold for a long period of time. So if we want to eat healthy food, that is food that nourishes our body, then it should not be very old. So the age issue in terms of prasad is not in terms of prasad, because it's prasad, it can be consumed later on. The age issue is primarily in terms of, is this going to sustain and nourish the body or not? One time Prabhupada was given a sabji that was made out of frozen foods, just like we do. And we use frozen foods as well, especially frozen peas. And Prabhupada, after eating it, he said, don't use this frozen food is rotten. Something like that, he said. The frozen food, it is rotten food. Even though it's not rotten, but Prabhupada felt it was rotten because it was frozen. So, so Krishna also will accept our food if it's not too old. Like Prabhupada was not so keen on accepting that food, right? So we offer it to the spiritual master. So once it's offered, then yes, but also we have to just remember in terms of our health, and will it be in the mode of goodness if it's not conducive for our health? Like one nice example of what you're saying is Jagannath Mahaprasad. That Jagannath Mahaprasad, specifically in Jagannath Puri, is so powerful that no one has gotten sick from eating that food. And it can be eaten even if it's a month old, like you're saying. Even if it's old food, it's like that. And I actually had this personal experience. We went to Jagannath Puri and we got Mahaprasad, and somehow one pot of that Mahaprasad, we accidentally forgot to eat it. So we saw it a week later, and normally I would never eat old food, but I ate that food, and somehow it didn't make me sick, and somehow I didn't feel sick, or it was just like it was very nice. So we also have to see how much prasad is that food, how powerful is that food. So I offered it to Krishna. Did Krishna really accept it? If not, if I'm not on that level that he's eating it, then maybe that food won't have that same transcendental quality as the Jagannath Mahaprasad does have, that actually doesn't get old, even if it's 1 week old. So we also have to, Prabhupada says, we always act on our level of realization. And it's actually a very interesting point in general, what you brought up, that prasad also has different qualities. And so if it's very potent prasad, it'll never get old, or it'll get old after a very long time. But if it's not so potent, then we have to be more careful.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
If I have permission, can I add just one line?
Sure. Yes.
It just came to my mind. Ayendra Prabhu's narrations. There was a period of time they had very difficulty of getting the food even.
Mhm.
and he was part of that group.
Yes.
And he was very hungry one night, and then he just ate the rice, whatever was left over. And actually, the other devotee told there was a mouse fell down on that, and they just removed the mouse, and then it was like not good to and he said that it's okay, it's prasad. I mean, like extreme case.
No, and see, that's why we act on our level of realization. And so, because he had that realization, he could act on it and not get sick. But if we don't have that realization, we won't be able to, we should not act on that level of realization. We actually should not, because we will get sick because we're not on that realization. Just like in other things, we can also apply this, right? Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj would sit in a public latrine and chant the holy name just so people would not come to disturb him. I mean, this was his, like, way of his putting a fence around him, is chanting. But if we sit in latrine, we'll get sick there. We'll die of some disease. But he was so pure, it wasn't affecting him. The same principle is there with prasad. It's very true. Yes. Ambika Mataji, you're next.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you
Hare
for the
Krishna.
wonderful class. I mean, I think so many people have asked these questions before, and it's it's the same question, but I think, whenever I read to this point, I always get tumble, and I was like, I'm back to square one. So it's purport from text 3. I'm just reading few lines, so this way, like, we all get the understanding. So this is where here Prabhupada says that we are all every living being. Okay, so originally every living being is the fragmental part and parcel of the Supreme Lord. Therefore, one is originally transcendental to all the modes of material nature. But when one forgets his relationship with Supreme Personality of Godhead and comes into contact with the material nature, so this is where I'm ending. So originally we were all in the with Krishna in the spiritual world, and in the spiritual world there are no three modes of material nature. Then how, I mean, I know it's it's hard to trace that, but how did we come into contact? How did we had that desire to enjoy separately from Krishna? Because we were all in the transcendental nature with Krishna. Then why did we had that desire?
Yes. And see, that's why desire comes first, then the modes come. Like we were speaking today, that according to one's association, which one chooses according to one's desire, one comes in certain modes of nature. So one can also say, well, even if there were the modes, why would one choose a mode of nature there? Because what is powerful, what is the deciding factor is not the modes. The mode is in some ways the result. It further modifies our desires. But what we start with is our desires. And the desire comes directly from the soul. You see, that has to do directly with the soul. It does not have to do with the modes. So when we have the wrong desires, then our heart is in the wrong place, as Prabhupada was saying. When the heart is in the wrong place, we search for the wrong association, or we get the wrong association. And that association further, affects our heart. And then according to the place of our heart and the association, we associate with certain modes. Now you say, well, why would I have this desire? Well, that is free will, right? That is our free choice. That is the one thing that is inconceivable about the soul. That is what makes spirit, spirit, and matter, matter, is that spirit has free will. It is just the nature of what spirit soul is. We have our choice. This is who we are. We have our freedom.
Thank you, Prabhuji. It's a good clarification. Thank you.
Thank you. No, thank you for clarifying that. Yes. Brandy Mataji.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare
Thank you for the
Krishna.
class. Glories to Srila Prabhupada.
Thank you.
I had many questions throughout today's session, so it's kind of hard to pick. But I'll go with my first one because it's a question that I've had for a long time. And I remember distinctly asking your mother about this over a year ago, whenever we used to be able to have Friday sessions in person still. And it's on the topic of suicide. So I asked her what happens to those people who commit suicide. And she, funny enough, she said, well, they become a ghost. Everybody knows that. And I said, oh, okay, makes sense. My godfather committed suicide, and he lived down the street from me. And I just found out that recently, while I was in Florida, his house was torn down. And we sold his house because he gave it to my mother and I. We sold it to the priest, to the church that was directly next door to where he lived. And he's going to make it into a recreation center for children, like a little youth group type area. So it's used in really good service. And I know it's hard to say with, details and stuff, but we've heard of like spirits being attached to places. And I was wondering if something like that would release a spirit, or like what is the process for a ghost to be relieved from that position, I guess.
Well, I mean, first of all, there are different types of ghosts, and there are different types of beings on that level. So as a result of suicide, depending on the consciousness of the soul, they may attain a different level of a ghost. Like in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, there's a story of Chota Haridas, who then performs suicide. He has to become an unembodied being, because why a ghost? What's the reasoning behind it? Because Krishna has given us this body, and he gave us this body for a purpose. And if we destroy the body, then Krishna says, well, the proper punishment, logically speaking, is that then you should not get the body, right? Then in our next life, we don't have the body, because that was the very thing we destroyed, that Krishna gave us. Okay, he says, so you try it without a body and you see how it is. So for a certain duration of time, we are without a body. And the reason why it's very frustrating, or you could say it's a punishment to be in a ghost body, is that we still have our senses, so we still have desires, but we don't have a body to fulfill those desires. And that's why the body of a ghost is very frustrating for the soul. It's a form of punishment. It's like being in front of a gulab jamun, but there's a transparent glass between you and the gulab jamun. So there you have the desire to eat it, but you just can't access it because you don't have the access to get it. How painful that would be. So therefore, what ghosts try to do, because they want to enjoy, they try to enjoy vicariously through the body of another person. And this is why generally ghosts haunt another person's body. They enter into another person's body, so that through their body, they can taste it. It's a nice plan, right? Now, the person who's haunted, that person is like, now what's happened to me, so that becomes a huge problem. And I actually had an experience with a ghost, a very small, just one time in my life. I went to an ashram, a temple, and I stayed there in the guest house, in the guest room. And at night, I woke up and I could not move my limbs. Like I was completely tight. It was like, and I went there with someone else. He was a sannyasi, and the sannyasi was in the other room. I was in this room. So my first thought was, because he was the only one there with me, is that somehow this sannyasi is tying me up or something. Like, well, what's happened? And then I realized, no one is here in this room. There's nothing here. And I could understand, oh, this is a ghost. And so I started to chant the Nrsimha prayers, just trying to chant the Nrsimha prayers, and the ghost wouldn't go away. And then I chanted Hare Krishna, and the ghost wouldn't go away. And then I started chanting Nityananda, 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 and the ghost went away. The ghost would go away, and then I'd stop and it'd come back. So I chant like 15, 20 minutes, and then it would go away. Like, okay, it's gone. And I'd stop and then it'd come back. And so I just kept on chanting. And then after a few hours, the ghost did go away. And that was
Wow.
So now the next day I was still wondering what happened. because I've always been skeptical of these things. I'm like, people say these things, but really do ghosts exist? And truly, I was very skeptical. At that time, I was like 18 years old. So next day, I went to the devotees at the temple, and while during prasadam time, I mentioned to a devotee sitting next to me who lived there, I said, last night I experienced something really funny. I think I experienced a ghost. And the devotee says, oh yeah, yeah. That room, that apartment, we made it into a guest room because we all know that there's a ghost in there. So no one wants to have it. I was like, oh, thank you for
Give it
letting
to the
me.
guests then.
Yes,
Wow.
it's a nice way to drive away your guests, right? I think that long time ago, before the devotees purchased this property, there was a murder that happened in that apartment, and so since that time, the soul has still been there, and so it's been haunted, and it was common knowledge amongst the devotees. And what that did most amazingly for me was that I didn't know this before I had this experience. And so even if they were making it up, let's say, I had my experience. And then when I shared it with them, they said, oh yeah, no, we also experienced it. And it's interesting that Maharaj was in the next place, in the same apartment, and he did not experience any ghost. I asked him. So you could see that he was more spiritually potent. He was stronger. I was the weaker soul in that place at that time. So the ghost came to me, tried me rather than trying Maharaj, and he stayed far away.
Wow. Well,
So
thank you for sharing that pastime.
Yes. So I hope that story, actually illustrates that really, yes, it's true. They stay in the same place, especially if it's a traumatic death. So there was a murder there, right? That's why they stayed. Not everyone stays there. It's not just for suicide that a person could become a ghost. If there's a deep attachment, then the soul may linger around in that place, especially the body that the soul left. And this is why in Vedic culture, they burn the body, because the soul is so attached to that body. The soul wants to stay there. By burning it, there's nothing left. It's gone. So if there was a ghost, it probably helped your godfather. The fact that they, burned down or tore down that house, because he won't be attached to the house anymore. It'll allow the soul to go. But the main way that we relieve the soul and help the soul is through chanting. And this was my personal experience, that how, my chanting of the Nishinga prayers or the Mahamantra was obviously not pure enough to, to the ghosts, they can't handle this, so they go far away. But Nityananda, Lord Nityananda is so merciful, which we know, that though chanted impurely, his name was powerful enough to send, even and chanted impurely was powerful enough to send the ghost away.
Well, thank you, because I had considered for quite some time now going and chanting for him, but I also was very confused on this topic because I didn't want to be worshiping a ghost. So but it was with the idea of intentions of trying to alleviate him. But thank you for that. Can I ask one more question?
Sure.
Please? Okay. You were mentioning about how if a student hasn't accepted, I'm trying to figure out how to word it. You were talking about like a student has to accept that role as a student in order for someone to give advice. So what if somebody doesn't, like myself, have I'm a neophyte. I don't really, I don't have a Diksha Guru, and I'm not at that point yet. What should somebody like myself do? How do you establish, is it important to establish a relationship like formally with a Shiksha Guru, or is it okay in the meantime to just have people that you go to? Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
What is the formality of that?
The main thing is the external things help. So the formality of initiation is not a meaningless formality. In fact, it's a very meaningful one. And eventually we should do that for sure. That's when really the spiritual master can dig in deep and really purify our heart, because we've explicitly committed to that relationship. But until then, the main thing is one of the heart, that the speaker understands that this person is genuinely come to listen, and the listener is going there genuinely to listen. And the best example of this actually is Krishna and Arjuna, that Arjuna has all these doubts and he's in such a difficult situation. He has tears coming down his eyes. He's in a life and death situation, and he's telling, I don't know what to do. I don't understand this. And this is so wrong. And I don't want to fight. And Krishna does not give him a word of advice until Arjuna finally says, Krishna, I can't figure this out myself. Please instruct me. I need your guidance. Up till that point, Krishna continues chiding him, but he doesn't actually give him advice. And Prabhupada mentions there, this is why. Because until Arjuna doesn't accept Krishna as his teacher, Krishna says, I can't teach you because you haven't accepted me as a teacher. Or, yeah, I'm here for you still, but I can't really instruct you. So Arjuna does not go through a formal process, but he makes it clear through his words that, okay, I'm here to listen. And then he does listen. And therefore that relationship is established. And he doesn't have to listen. So he's coming there for advice, but then at the end, Krishna is the perfect teacher, which is something we should do also if we are in that role. He tells him, I've given you my advice. Now you are free to do what you like to do. It is your choice what you want to do. So again, this is mentorship, right? That mentorship means we give advice, but then we leave the decision up to the person, what they want to do. It's up to you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Yes, Ma.
Hare Krishna, Mataji. Hare Krishna. I was just going to say one point in this, that's why you see in the movement how gurus, they like to give advice to the, because they're their students. And sometimes we may take them wrongly, that they favor their own disciples, and followers, because like Shastra says, one generally should give advice only to those who are willing to take advice, who are their students, So I was thinking how many times this is misconstrued sometimes in the movement, where we criticize others for, criticize others, or we are not accepting how gurus may be hesitant to give advice to others other than their disciples.
Yes, very nice point. So in terms of, this is a practical point, that very nice point, that the spiritual master can very freely and liberally give advice to his disciples in a way that they cannot to others, because they don't know, is this person wanting to be my student or not? And so their liberal advice to the disciples can be misconstrued as favoritism. Oh, they're spending so much time with them, we're giving them advice, why not us? But it has to do with the relationship. And that relationship is up to us.
Yeah. And also criticizing that how they keep to their own disciples and they don't, mix with others and things like that. It's just natural, because they are listeners, very careful listeners, and they have accepted the guru as their role. But generally we see these gurus, they are very magnanimous, in loving others, though. I've had great mercy and love from them, even though I'm not their disciple, So.
Thank you, Mataji. It's always such an honor to hear from you.
Hare Krishna. One other point I wanted to make about, regarding, people who are meat eaters going to hells, as it says in the 5th canto, they go to the hellish planets and there's particular hells and things like that. One time, one disciple went crying to Prabhupada and said, my great grandfather or grandfather, I don't remember, used to work in a slaughterhouse. But where is it? I really loved him. Where is he going to be now? She was really genuinely very concerned. And then Prabhupada And but then Prabhupada asked some more details, and she mentioned that how he was working in a kosher slaughterhouse. No, it wasn't like a typical slaughterhouse. So they were following some rituals, and Prabhupada said, "Don't worry, he's gone to one of the demigod planets." So it was very interesting, because we can take Prabhupada's words and say, "Oh, I don't think he meant it. He was just trying to pacify the devotee." But actually, Prabhupada would never say things whimsically, So we have to take his words very seriously. So all I want to say, there's so many subtleties in where a person ends up with, and there's so many subtleties, and also we are not completely aware of so many planets, so many different planets out there. The universe is full of, all types of planets. And like the fifth canto say, there's demigod planets even in the bottom, in the lower planetary system. So many things are there. So we shouldn't take things as just black and white, like you said. There's so many different things. And but yes, the principle still remains the same, is that we should not eat meat. And also, Prabhupada seriously condemns big slaughterhouses, that these mass killings, there's absolutely no way anybody can be saved from that, Sin.
Yes, this is a very nice point, actually. That's why we were speaking of Kali worship also, and how, if it's done according to rules and regulations, then at least it's not so sinful. But at the same time, the one has to be very, very careful, and it is at the same time, any form of meat eating, like the Bhagavatam says, will bring us the suffering in future lives. But Krishna deals with different souls according to the knowledge that they have, and like Ma, the point that you're saying is very true. Like even a meat-eating Christian can go to heaven if the Lord desires. So ultimately, we are not the judges on all these things in terms of food. These are principles for ourselves to follow and to show by example. But what the Lord does, how he decides to deal with certain situations, is up to him.
Yes.
Swati Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji. Thank you so much for the wonderful class. So Prabhuji, my question is related to, the discussion we had around Brandi Mataji's question, but a different perspective. So you mentioned that we should look at what right do I have, or what relationship do I have when, telling someone about Krishna. And the conflict or dilemma I have is Chaitanya Mahaprabhu also says, I think in the Chaitanya Charitamrita, that Jare dekho tare kaho Krishna Upadesh. So I mean, am I being too simple just to take it, as it is literally? Should we not really, if it's, my colleague or just a casual acquaintance or someone in the community, I mean, should we not really telling them about Krishna because maybe we don't really have a great friendship with them, or we don't have a relationship? Like, how should we, interpret this statement that tell everyone about Krishna?
So this statement is not about telling people about Krishna. This statement is regarding correcting people. So correcting people, maybe chastising them or giving them critical feedback, so to say. We should tell everyone about Krishna, like Lord Nityananda Prabhu did. Beg them, please chant the holy name of Krishna. Inform them about Krishna. But if we tell them, no, you're wrong and this is bad, then we need a relationship to do that. So we should not go up to someone and say, you're a very sinful person because you're eating meat, because they have not taken that role. But we can go up to a person and say, this book is very nice. It's a book of spiritual knowledge, and it's really helped me. And it describes, the nature of spiritual reality and the soul and who is God. That is our duty. And that is something that is beneficial, it is pleasing, and is also truthful. The unpleasing part, when we have to say something that is displeasing, that we know someone will not like to hear, that is something that is not up to us. Now, some people, as I think you might be thinking right now, some people will, Krishna consciousness is very displeasing to them. right? So how do we tell them? Because they will get angry. Well, there's something that will be pleasing to them. Either Krishna Prasad will be pleasing to them, or Harinam will be pleasing to them, music will be pleasing to them. So we have to then give them Krishna consciousness in such a way that is pleasing to them. Or even if we do displease them, we're still just saying what is in our heart. We're not criticizing them. Like Nityananda Prabhu, when he was preaching to Jaga and Mother, they got really angry, but he still kept preaching them. He was just telling them this is the truth. So he was not doing that. Finally, I should also mention that, I mean, the devotee also takes risks. So this is what is recommended in the scripture, but sometimes a devotee will instruct someone, even if they know that they'll get angry, because that is what the devotee, out of his immense compassion, feels that they should do. So preaching is also taking a risk. Yes, at times we will displease people, and we may not be in that position, but we will still take that role because we're told to be merciful. And the main answer to your question is that Krishna says in the Gita, he says that don't share this knowledge with a faithless person. Krishna says, don't share this knowledge with a faithless person. In chapter 18, we'll come to it. But then Prabhupada in the purport says that the devotees are actually so merciful that even though Krishna is saying don't share it with a faithless person, they still go and share it with this faithless person. Yes.
Prabhuji, thank you, because recently I spoke to someone and they are having a tough situation, and I was just trying to help, and I just wanted to share that, look, this has helped me and maybe you want to explore it, but I don't know how they took it. Maybe like you said, they got displeased, and again, my intention was not to displease them or to make them angry, just give them a solution that is eternal, because they're going through some bodily issues. So I just wanted to reconcile that. Maybe did I not have the relationship? Should I not have spoken? Or, that's what I was trying to understand. But thank you.
Yeah. Well, we follow this principle, and then sometimes we have to take a risk. Sometimes it helps a person, sometimes it doesn't. Like there was a book distributor, and he was distributing books, and this man was getting really angry at him, and he was inside a car, and he's like, the devotee's like, open the window, I want to give you a book, but he's getting really angry at him. And so the devotee still leaves the book on his windshield wiper and goes away. And then the man later on comes to the temple, and he says that I was sitting in the car, I was about to commit suicide. I had put the gas vent inside my car. I was just waiting for it to fill up with carbon monoxide. And in the meantime, I thought I'll read a nice book. So I pulled out that book and I started reading it. And then I decided not to kill myself. So the thing is that this person was getting so angry at the devotee, but the devotee still told him because he knew it would be good for him. So when in doubt, we should always try to help people, but then try to apply this principle, especially with devotees. See, these principles are primarily for relationships amongst devotees. So there's another devotee, and that devotee is wrong. Should I correct that devotee or not? Well, do I have that relationship? Prabhupada says we're a lion outside, but a lamb at home. So when we're outside, then we're more in a battleground. Okay, Maya's there. We have to share this knowledge with others. They become displeased, so what? I mean, I'm not going to, meet with them soon again anyway. At least they'll get this spiritual knowledge. We're not hurting them. We're just giving them some knowledge, and they can, get angry at me. But amongst devotees, that's the place where these things are very valuable.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you. Hare Krishna. Indu Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Wonderful class. I mean, definitely a lot of things to think about. And I would like to thank you for the beautiful presentation. The slides are just amazing.
Actually, the slides also, I want to mention, I mentioned before also that many of them and many of the pictures are the mercy of Urmila Mataji. So yeah, she's very amazing, and she's very kind also. Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Thank you so much. Yes, I have two questions. One is regarding the three modes of food, And so in that you mentioned, it was interesting that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur talked about food. First of all, the money that we are putting into it, right?
Mm.
The source of the money. But how about the source of the food itself? Like we have, that was not mentioned in that. Previously, of course, it was pure, the vegetables on its own. And clean.
Maybe a little louder, Mataji. Just
Oh, sorry.
yeah, no, that's
Yeah.
it.
So
Yes.
previously, the food, the source of the food was clean.
Now it's clear. Yes.
Yes, now that is kind of a big issue, right? We have GMO, non-GMO. We have so many ingredients, and the genetic makeup of the food itself is being modified. So, do we not have to be worried about it?
Yes, we do, and this is why Prabhupada said the best food is when we have our farms and we grow our food and we offer to Krishna, and that's especially the case when we in relation to milk and dairy products, because that food, when it's sourced from Krishna's cows, it has a very powerful medicinal effect on the devotee, and Krishna is so pleased. So again, it's we try our best. Again, it is all Prabhupada says, making the best of a bad bargain. We're in Kali Yuga, we're in this fallen age, and we're trying to serve Krishna in the best way that we can. And as the movement expands, we will become more and more closer to the goal. Just like in Hungary, at the farm in Hungary, everything they're producing on their farm, the milk, the grains, and offering it to Krishna. So the source is pure, the money, I mean, like all aspects of it are very spiritual. And that's why the food is very spiritually potent. On the other hand, if a devotee is sacrificing their life for Krishna and they're preaching in the city and they're doing so much preaching, Krishna may be very pleased by their service, and the food that they offer to Krishna and that the prasad that they bring may be very spiritually potent because of their intense devotion to Krishna. And Krishna is giving us all of these things, but ultimately we have to remember the key element is bhakti or devotion, which supersedes everything else. So an example of this is Jayananda Prabhu in ISKCON. It's actually described that when Jayananda Prabhu, who Prabhupada made into a saint in our movement, when he would cook something, devotees who ate it, they said it was so delicious that they'd never eaten something like this in their life. And it was just the same khichdi, it was the same, burnt halwa. But if he had cooked something, it was so delicious, and they could understand that Krishna was accepting the food that he was offering. That it was actually Krishna prasadam, it was so pure, Krishna had accepted the food, so it's so tasty. And many devotees were like this, many devotees are like this today, that when they cook something, it is especially tasty because Krishna accepts the food. And then it doesn't matter, money, source, whatever it is, if Krishna's accepted it, it's all spiritual. So both things, yeah, Prabhupada was trying to set up a civilization, and therefore he gave us the principles of Varna Ashram. And all of these things in terms of sourcing our food and purity are very important. At the same time, Prabhupada was giving us a spiritual process of bhakti that transcends, or you could say supersedes, our personal limitations that we are just realistically limited to. Although we don't want it this way, but we are limited to our limitations. And if the element of devotion is there, that's the most important element. And then Krishna forgives the shortcomings, and he'll still accept the food.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. Can I ask a quick question on charity or later?
Go ahead.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, so with regard to charity, we talked about the three modes. And so in Rajas, there is also, we say when we regret what we have donated later. It happens a lot, especially when we are donating for a material cost, right? So you donate to someone on the streets and they don't use it for the right purpose. So, but how do we support, especially in India, there are so many beggars, there are so many people who need help. So how do we support that, or what do we do?
Yes. Yeah, you see, if we give it to a materialist, it's already in the mode of passion. So the thing is that we said that how it's in the mode of passion, if we regret it, that is more like if we give it to a temple or to a devotee, but then after that we're like, oh, why did I give so much? I should have kept some for myself. Then that is, although we're giving it to a devotee, it still might be in the mode of passion because of our regret. Now, in terms of helping, I was actually thinking of the same point that you were asking when preparing for the class, in terms, well, what about helping the poor? Because Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur did tell his Grahastha disciples who are wealthy that you should give to the poor when they beg from you. Because otherwise, if you don't, your heart will become hard. A devotee should still be compassionate. And so when the beggars would come, he says, give them something. You have the money, give them a little bit. Don't hand over your bank balance to them, because that's for Krishna. But give them something, because otherwise your heart will become hard. So we follow this principle. If someone is coming and begging us for something, they need something, unless we know for a fact that they will misuse it, we may give it something to them, because a devotee is a human being. Like one man, I remember, came up to me and he said, sir, I really need a cigarette. Can you please give me a $5 bill? Well, that was more of a reason I didn't give him anything. But on the other hand, a poor beggar comes up, they're clearly, malnourished and they need something. You don't have prasad with you, you don't have food with you, they're begging for something. We should give, because we have to set an example for others. We have to also, that person should see that a devotee has a heart. We should give to them and give them a chance to living for life, so that they can cultivate their spiritual life. Now, that's at the moment. That's sort of spontaneously. This is what the mood that we should have. Now, in terms of what we plan, we should give in such a way that it helps people both spiritually and materially. Or if we need to help them materially, that it helps them spiritually also. So Prabhupada felt great, he felt great pain when he saw that the children in Mayapur were fighting over the trash in the bin. And therefore he made an organized plan that he said all of my temples should give free food, so that no one within 10 miles of that temple will go hungry. So that was a plan. They should give free prasadam, right? So that was a way in which they could be helped spiritually and materially. And so that's how we respond to the hunger and the shortage of food in this world. This is how we help them. Prabhupada gave us the process. He said 10 miles within every temple. So what this does is two things. One, it gives them Krishna Prasad, but Prabhupada just wasn't happy with that. He said we shouldn't go out in the middle of nowhere and just distribute Prasad. Why? Because it'll help them, but then it really doesn't connect them to Krishna. It's doing two things. It's giving them Prasad, and the second thing is it's connecting them with the place of spiritual knowledge. Because those people know it's coming from the temple. These are nice people. That's a nice place. Let me now find out, what are they teaching? What are they preaching? So you see, it does both things. It actually makes a relationship with the devotees, and then they connect. Like even in America, so many people, they come to the Sunday feast just for the food, but they come to the temple for the food. And therefore, one day they start hearing and they become devotees. If we take that same food and we just go to a homeless shelter, it's still very good. It's very nice, but it's not as good. Prabhupada was trying to get the most mileage out of what our goodness. It's just intelligence. That's all he's doing. So, okay, you go to the homeless shelter and you give food. Well, they'll accept the food. They may not even like it. Sometimes we've distributed at the homeless shelter and they don't like prasadam. Their taste is different and they throw it away. So they take the food, but their connection with the devotees and Krishna is not so clear. So Prabhupada was a genius, you see. He said, no, give the free food and give it from the temple so they get connected.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. That's a very important point for me to keep in my mind. Thank you.
Thank you. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.
Sulba Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare
Very,
Krishna.
very, very interesting class, because the food and all, we all are so attached with prasadam and all. So very interesting class. Now my question is about the remnants, right? From whom we should accept it, like and let's say if I give my my eaten food to somebody, I'll get some karma.
Mm.
Right? So why, like, let's say if you are taking from Vaishnavas or, some Swami comes and we take the remains from them, so don't they get karma? And in which mode this prasadam would be, like definitely not in the mode of ignorance, but what other modes will involve?
So that's the thing, that the devotees therefore very careful in giving out the remnants, because in giving the remnants, one is sort of informally accepting the karma of the person who accepts the remnants. Lord Chaitanya, someplace in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he says that a renunciate should never give away his remnants unless they want to fall down. So it's very dangerous. But the devotees still do it. The great devotees, they still do it because they're on that level where they know they won't fall down. And by eating the remnants of the devotees, they know that the people will get benefit. So, so Prabhupada's remnants was distributed, but still it was distributed to the devotees. The spiritual master gives his remnants to the disciple. It's described that there's two things that are very powerful in our advancement in spiritual life. One is the remnants of a devotee, and the other is the dust from the devotee's feet. So these two things are especially potent materials for advancement in spiritual life. So we should always try to get them. We should try to, by hook or crook, try to get the remnants and the dust of the devotees. Actually, in the Bhagavatam, it said that Narada Muni takes the remnants of the sages with their permission. He actually takes their permission before taking it. And that's actually the best way to take remnants, because you're volunteering them to take your karma, right? So therefore, take their permission. Will you please accept my karma? I will take your remnants. But sometimes also devotees, they do it by stealing. Like I think Kalya Krishnadas in Chaitanya Charitamrita, he would go to the dustbin. After the devotees had eaten the food, they would throw the mango peels and things like that in the dustbin, and he would find the remnants from the dustbin, and he would take the remnants of the devotees. He would take what they had left and throw it in the dustbin. So that was just a different mood, a mood of almost ecstasy that is very hard to imitate. But that was his faith in the mercy of the devotees. Does that answer your question? Did I get it fully? I'm not sure if I did.
Yeah, you got it almost everything. But I was asking about in which mode this will be. Like, what are the mode will be this prasadam conduct? Like
the devotees' remnants, which mode will it be in, or what?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that'll always be transcendental because it's a devotee.
Transcendental.
Yes,
okay.
Transcendental mode. Yes.
Okay.
The Lord's remnants or the devotees' remnants, they're transcendental. Yes.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Sham Karuna Mataji, do you have a question or comment I saw in the chat? You're muted, Mataji. You're muted.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, your class was so wonderful. Because of you only I have learned so many things in Bhagavad Gita which I didn't know at all. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
And regarding the food, Prabhuji, that even Advaita Acharya, he took the dust of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu when he was unconscious. So without the knowledge of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. So I immediately got that thing.
Yes. But you had some question about book distribution.
Book distribution, Prabhuji, that books which Chaitanya Charitamrita, some people wanted it about it, and then I will let you know, Prabhuji, about the book distribution. Okay.
Oh no. Okay, so maybe that's Shama Madhavi Mataji. I'm sorry.
Not me.
Sorry. She has yes. No, Sham Madhavi Mataji has a text in this box. It says, Hare Krishna Prabhu, since I have to leave, I'm messaging you. When we talk about using money earned in a pure way for devotional service, then what about the money that we take from people during distribution, during book distribution, which might not be so pure? How do we reconcile? So this is the question. This is a nice question, I thought. See, for the service of Krishna, we can take money from people and make preparations for Krishna and offer it to Krishna. There's no problem in taking money from people, even if they're not fully pure, to offer to Krishna. That's no problem. It's when we eat it, that is to be avoided, right? In the same way with the book distribution, by taking their money in exchange for the book, by taking some money in exchange for the book, we are helping that person advance in spiritual life, because that money will be used to publish more books. So that is completely fine. It's just that we don't take money for ourselves from an impure source. Of course, if it's completely from an unethical source, like drug dealing, then we may not even take that money for Krishna's service, because that person is doing a disservice, and so therefore we don't take their money. But if they're not completely pure, we can still take the money for Krishna's service. That's no problem, just not for our own service. Okay, Narayana Prabhu.
Hare Krishna Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for wonderful class, nicely explained.
Thank you.
I have two questions, Prabhuji.
Okay.
The first one is regarding the food and prasadam. The conversation between Arjuna and Lord Krishna happened in Dwapara Yuga, where we are living in Kali Yuga, where pollution and adulteration is so high. In the prasadam also, that is being, we hear the news, a lot of people are getting affected by eating the prasadam and all that. Yes. So I'm really wondering, how that Dwapara Yuga conversation is relevant in Kali Yuga now.
Yes. You actually raise a very nice point. This is why Krishna says, Hare Nama, Hare Nama, Hare Nameva Kevalam Kalo Nasteva 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 Katiranyata. So the process in this age is chanting the holy name of Krishna. That is the main process. The food helps that process. It's a very important factor in the chanting. It allows us to chant purely. But that's why I was mentioning the food, the main thing is our intention. Are we trying to be whimsical? Or are we trying our best to follow Krishna's rules and regulations that he said in Dwapara Yuga, right? So pure food is not pure, source is not pure, what can we do? But we are trying our best. That pleases Krishna. We cannot be fanatical in this day and age, it is true. We cannot be perfectly pure. The purity only comes from chanting. Chanting is our process. Chanting is the main way. But at the same time, if we are whimsical, then Krishna will teach us a lesson. And you see, then Krishna will make us fall from spiritual life for some time, because we're not trying to follow the regulations of the scriptures. Right? This is what we were talking about today, that although that passion, ignorance means not following the scriptures. So he did give us the scriptures, right? Krishna gave us the Shastras. And so he gave us those instructions to follow to the best of our ability.
So by chanting Hare Krishna Mahamantra, even though that is adulterated, I think that gets purified.
Yes, whatever shortcomings there are, Krishna makes it up. Yes.
Very nice, Prabhuji. My second question is regarding the examination. On 10th April, we have planned. So in fact, I've flown from Hyderabad to Pune now for attending that exam. Okay. So I think still we are on the schedule, I think.
Yes. So I was actually going to mention that all of you need to send me the name and email address of the person I should send the exam to, and also put in the date on when I should send it. Okay. So this way I will send it, and then your proctor or whoever will receive it. Actually, the date doesn't matter because it's being sent to you. So just the name and the email of the person I should send it to, and around April 7th or 8th, I'll try to send it by that time. So you have it before April 10th. And then it's between you and your advisor or your family member when exactly you will take it.
Very nice. Thank you very much, Prabhuji. Very nice class.
And in fact, the classes has helped me so much. I practice astrology as a hobby. So in fact, for the ISKCON devotees and all who come to me with their problems, I explain in the terms of what you have given in the reflection way and all three gunas and modes and all. It goes to their brain directly, and I think they are getting satisfied much more. So really, your class has helped me to improving my knowledge in the subject. Thank you very
This
much.
is all the mercy of Srila Prabhupada. Thank you, Prabhu. Yes. Madhuri Mataji?
Hare Krishna Prabhuji, Danvat Pranam.
Dandavat
Thank you
Pranam.
for the nice class. I have one question, Prabhu. My friend who is not following ISKCON, who is into demigod worship, she said that while worshipping Durga Devi, she saw Krishna in her meditation. So how do we understand that, Prabhuji? Can people really see Krishna in their meditation? So how do we understand?
It's possible, but the way that you would know if she really did see Krishna or not is what happens after she saw Krishna, right? So people say, oh, I saw Krishna in my meditation, but the scriptures tell us the effect of seeing Krishna, right? Rupa Goswami says that, oh, my friend, don't go on the bank of the Yamuna River, because if you go there, you'll find this. If you have any attraction to your friends and your society, friendship, or love, don't go there. Because if you go there and you see Krishna, then you won't be able to maintain your societal, you'll lose all your attraction for your societal things. And he's saying it as a way of a pun, like he's making a joke out of it. Obviously, that's what we want to, but the point that he makes is that if we see Krishna, we'll never be interested in material life again. So, so the effect, the way, the test of seeing Krishna is not seeing Krishna, but what happens afterwards. If after that we're just as attached to material life, then we probably didn't see Krishna, because that thing we cannot make up. Our attraction to material life is not something that we can remove artificially. So if truly since that time she's been chanting 16 rounds every day and she's been searching for Krishna, and all she can think about day and night is Krishna, and she's therefore only eating Krishna prasadam, then she's seen Krishna. But if not, then maybe she saw, the image of Krishna in a dream. Or maybe, it's probably not that she's lying, but it's probably that, she saw the image of Krishna in her mind, like we see the deity. But she didn't directly see Krishna. She saw the deity of Krishna in her mind.
Thank you so much, Prabhuji. That helps.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Very nice question.
Prabhuji,
Yes.
sorry to interrupt. On this point, I have one point to make. I don't know whether that is true or my imagination, but when I was child, I would say around 6-7 year old, then I saw one dream that, one side Krishna was standing and another side little snake was there. And we were playing like, running here and there, we were trying to play the tag. That's what I saw. I don't remember why I saw that and all. But then after I joined Krishna consciousness couple of years back, maybe 2 years or somewhat. So during that time, when I was 6-year-old and when I was almost 45, I didn't do any spiritual activity, nothing.
Yes.
So it's relates to this incident what you explained. So why that happened, and what was that I saw in my dream?
Yes. So this is a fact. This is why there's different. Are we seeing Purna Bhagavan Sri Krishna? Are we seeing Krishna in his fullness, or are we seeing Krishna, a glimpse of Krishna? That is it. So seeing Krishna is also a relative term. Relative meaning that to what degree are we seeing Krishna? Like someone went to Prabhupada and he said, where is God? Show me God. And they were sitting in the temple at that time. And Prabhupada said, God is here. He's on the altar. What else do I have to show? But he said, you do not have the eyes to see Krishna. That is the problem, right? So Prabhupada was seeing Krishna, but fully seeing Krishna. The devotees were also seeing Krishna, but they were partially seeing Krishna. They feel the reciprocation with the deity, but not fully like Prabhupada does. And this man, he was seeing the deity, but he was seeing only a statue. So all three were seeing Krishna, but they were seeing Krishna to their level of realization. So your experience was a true experience. You know that it was a true experience. But were you seeing Krishna like the way Prabhupada was seeing Krishna in his fullness? Were you seeing Krishna like the devotees do? Like, wow, this is a mercy of Krishna. Krishna has shown a small glimmer of himself. Or were you seeing Krishna just as sometimes like, I see a movie of Krishna, I see a film of Krishna, and at night I dream of Krishna. Were you seeing Krishna like that? So our realization of Krishna, our vision of Krishna is different based upon the eyes that we have. Krishna is the same. So Krishna came to you, but if our eyes are not fully purified, we'll not fully see him to the fullness that Mother Yashoda sees him.
Yeah, makes sense.
Yes. But that he gives us that to inspire us. So he does give us special mercy, which is just causeless, to sometimes push us. Like people say, I saw a vision of Krishna. So it is a true vision, and that's due to the Lord's mercy to help us become inspired. So it's now 12 o'clock here and 1 o'clock your place. So I was
Can I add a
thinking
small thing to this, Prabhuji? This is the time factor. Actually, she has seen Mataji's question.
Yes.
She has seen when she was very young, but the time factor, the time took so much.
Yes.
In the time, no appropriate time only, she has come again, has become devotee, and has been having Krishna consciousness now.
Yes.
Krishna consciousness now. That's what it is. Yeah, thank
Exactly.
you.
No, it takes, Krishna gives the experience, but then only years later we will actually act on it. Like, Narad Muni, he saw Krishna's vision, but then Krishna said, I won't show you again because now you have to endeavor to find me. You have to make the effort. And once you make the effort, then I'll appear to you again. So Krishna gives us a vision just to increase our greed, but then he expects us to make an effort, and then he shows us again after some time. So thank you very much,
Hare
everyone.
Krishna Prabhuji, sorry for interrupting.
Okay.
last quick question regarding the test. So for the verse, 27 verse memorization and writing, I know you are going to give us the theme for every verse and then, you write the verses. So are we supposed to write only verses or the translation also?
Verse and translation, both. Yeah.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Yes, Prabhuji, because my husband, my Prabhuji, and I both are taking the Bhakti Shastri classes, and we were kind of, debating. I said, yes, both. And he said, no, only one. So I was like, better be clarifying.
No, thank you for clarifying it. Yes, yes. No.
Will you give the number of the chapter number and the verse like that, and then we have to write it?
Oh, okay. So good point. So I will just give you the topic. I'll say, where does Krishna say that that we should think of him continuously, day and tushyanti charamanti cha, that the devotees of the Lord continuously chant and hear about Krishna. I might give you like a good portion of the translation so you know exactly what it is, and then because that's the thought, that's the thing that you're trying to do, then I would like you to put down the verse, the chapter, the verse number, the verse, and the translation.
Okay, I think both the Sanskrit as well as the meaning, both we have to write, right?
Yes. Yes. And it's just 27 verses, so it's not that much. I know it's a lot, but it's still doable. So start early, and then it'll be easy. So yes.
Prabhuji, that verse memorization will be online or Prabhuji, how?
Everything will be written. So I'll send you the test to the email address that you give me. I'll send the test to the mentor, the email address that you give me, and then they will print it, and you'll take the test, and then you'll scan it and send it back to me.
So on April 10th, we have to take the test.
No, I will send it like April 7th or 8th, like I mentioned. I'll send it at that time, and then you have until like April 17th because we won't have classes. We will not have class on April 10th and April 17th. We recontinue on the 24th. So you take it anytime during that period that is convenient to you and your mentor, and then you return the exam. So, I mean, as long as, please give me some time also, so I have time for grading. So maybe try to finish it by the 20th. So you can take it anytime after I send it, and try to complete it by the 20th of April.
Okay, so you will be sending the questions as well as the verse memorizations in that.
So you have the list of the verses to memorize,
Yes,
right?
Prabhuji.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So there's only one exam, and that has the verse memorization questions in it.
Okay, sure. Thank you so much, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Prabhuji, one last thing I want to ask. After this Bhagavad Gita, like we are going to conduct 3 more books. So when we are expecting to get it completed, because I have to go for some procedure, so I have to plan that. So what month we are, looking at to end this course?
Feedback aa raha hai. Feedback aa raha hai. Feedback aa raha hai. To close it. I don't know exactly. This is the first time through, so it's hard for me to say. In the Gita, I knew 18 chapters, 18 weeks. But, like the goal is to do in about 7-8 months. I think that's realistic to do in that time period. So as soon as possible. Basically, I don't waste any time. In the Nectar of Devotion, that's the one I don't know. I don't know how long it will take exactly to get through the Nectar of Devotion. And so, but total time, about 7 to 8 months.
Thank you, Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Srimad Bhagavad Gita ki jai. Prabhupada ki
Jai.
Jai.
Hare
you,
Krishna,
Prabhuji.
Prabhuji. Thank
Hare
you. Hare
Krishna,
Krishna.
Prabhuji. Thank
Hare
you.
Krishna.
Thank
Dandavat
you.
pranam to all.
Prabhuji.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jai
Thank you so
Krishna.
much. Dhanwad pranam.